Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Big Finish Fans Easter Special, where we'll be talking about the Fourth Doctor Adventures Series 3 released back in 2014. We decided to do this just out of sheer curiosity, really, because I remember we messaged each other back in February going, wouldn't it be cool to do sort of a revisit of the Fourth Doctor Adventures Series 3, because it was the first series we listened to. So I'm joined by Luke. So hello.
Hello, everyone. Yes, it was when we were talking about Series 10 that had just come out, another Fourth Doctor and Leela series. I was sort of reminiscing about that old time. I thought, wouldn't it be fun to just, talk about this on stream? I sort of said it half jokingly, but you were like, yeah, let's do it. And then I thought, you know what? I am happy to join you for that.
I feel
give a good excuse to revisit it, because it is one of those ones I do quite like, but just with so much new content coming out, you sort of need an excuse to revisit things, don't you? And
especially with March, month just gone, we had like the Lost Stories, the end of the main range, and in the next couple of weeks we're going to be beginning Dalek Universe and the Ninth Doctor, which we'll talk about when we get to the news. But yeah, I feel like you're way more nostalgic for this series than me. I feel like Series 4 is probably where I have a bit more rose-tinted glasses for, because that was the first series I subscribed to.
I see.
So I thought
this was my first Big Finish purchase in general. Well, I say purchase, it was a birthday present, but it was my first Big Finish thing in general, really, getting this whole series in one, which is a bit... I feel like most people would have gone for just one release on its own or something to start them off, ease them in just in case. But no, I went whole hog and ended up getting this entire series in one go, which would have been,
I mean, we can see how effective that is as a jumping on point when we get onto Series 3 of the Fourth Doctor. So let's start off with what have we been doing. So we let a few people join so we can just see what you've been up to. So what have you been listening to, watching, reading? So what have you been
doing? Well, obviously with this, started listening to King of Sontar and White Ghost first, like about 3 weeks ago to a month ago, I think, was when we arranged, we'll set this date and get it all listened to by then. So I listened to those two. And then suddenly the floodgates opened, Big Finish threw Stranded at us, through the Lost Stories at us, the end of the beginning. And so it's just a case of putting that on hold, thinking, I'm on top of that, I can listen to all this good new content, and then ended up quickly finishing it off over the last week, getting back into it. But yeah, with those stories, there's been a lot of fun stuff there, some very interesting, I suppose, very out of left field stuff in some ways, isn't it? It's not your typical Big Finish month. Like, we have this throwback to like a weird 60s version of a story that we already know with Return of the Cybermen.
Yeah.
And then randomly alongside that, some Douglas Adams style humor with...
Have you listened to Doomsday Contract out of curiosity?
Yeah, I finished that one as well. Have you?
I'm halfway through it, and I'm a little bit disappointed in it, to be honest.
It improved for me in the second half. I will say, though, a lot of it didn't quite work for me as well as I had hoped. I think my favourite of the two is Return of the Cybermen. But yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? Because I feel like a lot of it's some funny ideas, but not necessarily played that funny. It feels like it's taking itself more seriously than it perhaps should. Did you get that feel with it?
I was expecting it to be a little bit more witty. Like, there are some nice little funny moments, but I was expecting it to be a bit more scattered with a bit more of that humor, what we see in season 17. Really, I feel like the Pixis sort of stuff was interesting, but it just seemed a bit ridiculous. I mean, it seems wrong saying ridiculous for season 17, but it just didn't seem to quite work for me in that regard.
It wasn't quite ridiculous in season 17 style of ridiculous, was it?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, in some ways, I'm almost glad it wasn't made, because I don't know how well it would have been done back. Not that that series has a whole lot going for it in terms of like standout quality other than City of Death. But yeah, in this, I don't think it would have it's not an On a City of Death. I think don't go in expecting that or Sharda. It's something below that level, but certainly works better on audio than it would have on TV at least.
I think that's the beneficial thing with the Lost Stories, that you can really see that a story at its full potential.
Yeah.
And I think this is one what falls into that category, really.
Yeah. Whereas Return of the Cybermen is sort of like an oddity there, in the sense that what we got with Revenge was probably higher budget, really, because going on location, filming in Wookiee Hole and such, whereas a lot of that is much more 60s style in budget as well, in the sense that it's all mostly set on Space Station Nerva itself instead. And you do have a bit off on the asteroid, but that's much more that is only, you would only need a couple of different locations for that, not as many sparse ones as you ended up having in Revenge itself. Not that they all look the best, but yeah, it's an oddity in that sense again, isn't it, really?
I think that's why people want to pick it up. I mean, you want to pick it up just to see how Sadie Miller, Christopher Naylor do Harry, and to see this alternative take. I think that's why people will get Return of a Cyberman, because it's a little oddity, and I think March is full of little oddity releases, like the Eric Roberts box set. That's a little oddity. That there's full of curious stuff this month, really.
Yeah, how are you finding that one so far? Because that's one I've yet to pick up, but I think you've got end of the first episode, is it?
I've listened to the first story in Master, the box set. That's my terrible American accent there. Yeah. But it's a really interesting way of reintroducing Eric Roberts as the Master. I think that it's a really great way because you focus on the character of Lila and building up this sort of dystopian Dalek invasion of Earth, ravaged Earth. You know, the Daleks have left and now it's Earth trying to rebuild itself. And obviously there's a lot of corrupt people trying to become the top dogs. And sort of throughout the story, you have this sort of time experiments going on, and you learn about why Lila has been chosen for this project. And you sort of get glimpses of Eric Roberts throughout the Master, I should say, throughout the box set. Well, throughout the story, I should say. And then sort of towards the end, we get him as the story. And I think that's when the story gets going a bit, actually, because I think it's very much sort of hell versus hell, because it's already this horrible place, but you know things are going to get even more bleak when he appears. And there are some wonderful moments of like great sort of body horror bits, what I'm not going to spoil, but that I think if you're not a fan of Eric Roberts, give it a go, because I have my doubts of Eric Roberts as the Master, but as soon as he started to do, I guess, mastery things, I was like, that he's the Master. It's great. I don't know if it's going to be War Master level of brilliance, but it is a good opening story. I mean, I've still got the Vienna story and the Daleks, but I think the Dalek one's going to be the most interesting one, because obviously it links back to TV movie, because obviously the Daleks executed the Master, and it's the Daleks trying to finish that job of executing the Master. So it seems very full circle, but I'm enjoying what I've listened to of Master so far, and it's one of those curious things, I think, like we said with Return of the Cybermen.
Yeah, that seems to be what they're going for with Eric Roberts' Master. Like back in with Masterful, during his and the Beaver's Masters, like little segment of that, he was very much in the shadows for a lot of it. And then when he does come in a bit more, he's sort of manipulating things to his advantage slowly. And so I think that seems to be the style they're going for with that Master.
I would definitely, I think, because we've all experienced Eric Roberts from day one with like the River Song and Ravenous, I think Masterful and the Master box set, I can't help but do that.
It's going to be a fun review.
It's going to be a fun review. I feel like that's Eric Roberts at his best as the Master. I think that's him knowing what he wants to do with the character. And I feel like his performance is a lot better, because I feel like he's got a bit more guidance with that sort of stuff. Really.
Yes, but I'm definitely looking forward to eventually getting into that. I think a lot of other stuff going on as well. It's busy with Big Finish, isn't it? It's
a never-ending task. It's never-ending. You finish one release, and then the day after, bam, another release is dropped, which is wonderful. It's wonderful to have these new stories, and I think Master, it's only a 3-hour box set, so I think that's quite nice. It's just
I think that's nice the format. Change. Yeah, the format going forward, isn't it? They're trying to really push the 3-hour ones, and I think it's one that does work. Like, you've got your beginning, your middle, and your end. It's that classic 3-act structure, and it's something that I think will hopefully work for most stories. I know it worked quite well with Wicked Sisters, for example.
That was very good.
Yeah, and I do feel, when you look back to some 4-part box sets, you do feel there's the odd episode that maybe is there to stretch it out.
Definitely. Should we move on to the news? Because we've got a fair bit of news to talk about. Very exciting news and some very topical news to coincide with this stream. It's like Big Finish. No, we were planning this. So we have the 9th Doctor. We had the trailer drop last week, which I'm going to be honest, it's probably the trailer I've listened to, watched the most out of any Big Finish release. It still feels very surreal that we have our boy Eccleston on Big Finish. So what did you make of the trailer?
Oh, it was wonderful, wasn't it?
Oh, glorious.
It's weird seeing a trailer because they haven't done that before, where they've had the like, not quite subtitles, but the text of what they're saying going along the screen along with it. It's not something that they have ever done before, I don't think, for a trailer.
But it's normally when you get that sort of type of trailer, it's when the box set has launched. So it feels very strange to have a video trailer before we've actually got the box set out. But whether that's for people getting into Big Finish, because I feel like the 9th Doctor's definitely got people.
It's the one they've pushed the most, isn't it? Like, more than David Tennant, this feels like the most exciting one they've done, and like the one that's got the most interest with people outside of Big Finish.
Yeah, because I think, speaking to people who aren't fans of Doctor Who, people have mentioned, Christopher Eccleston's doing this audio. Do you know about this? And it feels very weird. People who aren't in this bubble what we're in are talking about Big Finish. It's absolutely crazy.
It's certainly come more into the mainstream. That, and like, he did who is it, Lorraine, the TV personality show that he did, where he was doing that just before he popped into the Big Finish recording studio to do one of these box sets. I think it was, it probably would have been the second one by that point, depending on whether or not they recorded in order, but certainly he'd have done Ravagers by then, I believe. So it's strange, isn't it, seeing all this going on? And then I think with Dalek Universe, we had like that little teaser trailer, but that was more for Dalek Universe as a whole, and it wasn't necessarily like it was just David Tennant monologuing over it. It wasn't actually a trailer with stuff from the stories. So I think you're right in that this is the kind of trailer we would get when the box set comes out, as opposed to one we'd get like teasing it a long while before. And in that set, it was very exciting hearing Christopher Eccleston back saying, "I'm back," and then having. Do
you feel like that was sort of a wink and nod that, look, guys, he's back.
Yeah, that was definitely like, you could tell as Nick was writing that in the script, he was like, "That would make a good trailer line, wouldn't it? I'll put it like this." And
that's trailer bait. That is trailer bait.
That's how we'll reintroduce it. And at first, it did feel a bit like, it's a bit on the nose, isn't it? But I think it doesn't help having the words "I'm back" flying at you either, just to make it even more on the nose. But I think when you've got the following line about, "Oh, I'm back in the TARDIS, you did it, old girl." So we know it off by heart, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, we've probably watched it constantly because, like, this day I never thought would arrive, but it's here. The 9th Doctor. Oh my god, it's amazing.
And it's taken like little lines from the era as well and reworked them and made them just that work so magically. Like when he says "sort of," but it's just so 9th Doctor, and it just hits you right in the feels hearing it.
Well, it's like the sass is off the scale. Like the energy, the high octane level of energy Eccleston's got within that trailer. It feels very much like the Dr. Eccleston would have had if he carried on in series 2. It does feel like a continuation, but it's not a continuation because it's pre-Rose.
Yeah, it's pre-Rose. What do you make of them going pre-Rose then? Because that's going to be the case for all of these. episodes.
I'm a little bit. I don't want to say disappointed because I don't want to seem ungrateful. But I think it would have been nice to have at least, Billy pop up in at least a box set of some kind, or I just think it would have been nice to have Rose in some, because Rose is such an integral part of Nine's character. It sort of feels wrong to have a story without her with Nine, really.
I'm excited to see what they do, and so the idea here is that they're carving this whole new era for him pre-Rose and making their own stuff rather than what they did with the 10th Doctor Adventures, which was sort of just, get out all the fanfare, we're redoing Series 4 and Series 2, we're getting all these typical RTD tropes going on. And it feels like they're really pushing the boat out much earlier for the 9th Doctor and taking some risks. And I think it suits Eccleston himself because he is very much there for the writing. They talk about that in the Vortex interview, about how he very much wants the quality to be there and for the character integrity to stick. And so I think you almost need to have those balls to do that, to just draw Eccleston in more rather than saying, we could go back to 2005 and retread all these fun things you used to do. Whereas I don't think Eccleston would have been as for that, although I imagine he would want to work with Billy again, but maybe he's not for the idea of slotting stories in between what he's already done. Perhaps.
Yeah. It is quite interesting because I feel like Eccleston very much does care about the legacy and the footprint Nine has on Doctor Who world. So I definitely see your point with that, but I feel like if the opportunity did arise that they wanted Billy, I feel like Chris would happily say, yeah, let's do one with Billy.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope this isn't all we get with these 12 stories. They sort of make it out like it could be. Like, I think it's very much it still feels like Big Finish themselves are treading on glass here. They don't want to break it, do they? They want to keep things steady and hope that into the future Eccleston will stick with them.
I mean, I think from the trailer, you can tell that he's enjoying himself recording these adventures. So I think that gives us hope in a way. And the way he talked about the Big Finish stuff in Doctor Who magazine, how the fans, I guess very much like Rose, healed him. I guess healed some of those wounds. And I think now he understands that his Doctor is loved and people want more stories of his Doctor. I think that he might be a bit more open, but again, I still feel like this is the 4 box set. That's it. Let's just enjoy it. But if there are more,
not push our luck.
Yeah, I don't want to push our luck, but I'm grateful that we have at least 12 new stories with the 9th Doctor. Speaking of those 12 new stories, we've got a bit of news about those. We have a 9th Doctor Cyberman story based on the Fritz Lang 1927 film Metropolis. Seeing the Cybermen feature that. That's a bit of a mouthful. So what do you make of that news?
I'm quite excited for that, I will say. I know some people are a bit more hesitant about the idea of the 9th Doctor encountering the Cybermen in particular, because that scene in Dalek where you have the helmet there and that nice little scene that makes it seem like maybe he hasn't seen him for quite a while. But as opposed to the Daleks, where post-Time War, that's very key to the 9th Doctor story. This Cybermen is something I can have much more leeway with personally. And also, I love the Cybermen. I love the 9th Doctor. It's going to be great hearing them together. Also, the story itself, like having it set on that old film set, sort of throws me back to stories like The Silent Scream, which I really like.
And The Vanity Trap as well, yeah.
Yeah, there seems to be a certain quality about stories set on film sets, doesn't there? That hopefully carries over to this story as well. And
not the Feast of Stephen. We don't talk about that.
Oh no. Big Finish stories on film
Big
sets.
Finish. Yeah.
We've got John Dorney, 9th Doctor. I think it's just one Cyberman, is how it's made out in the article, and also in the credits for the Volume 3. It's going to be the 3rd episode of Volume 3. It's credited as just Nick Briggs' Cyberman, not Cybermen like he usually would be. So it seems like just a lone one, maybe struggling to survive a bit. But
I mean, do you have any theories of the design they use, whether it be Wheel in Space, 10th Planet design? What would you like to see?
I don't know, to be honest. Like I've mentioned to you how it would be amusing to have the 80s Cyberman and get an excellent versus fantastic story. But in this case, I think especially with the film set and back in the 1920s, those Cybermen definitely wouldn't work. Also, it's Nick Briggs confirmed voicing it, not David Banks. So I can see it being maybe. I hope they don't go new series because I think it's important to keep that relaunch of that design for later on with the 10th Doctor post Rise of the Cybermen and everything. So maybe like 10th Planet, or maybe do the Mondasian design from the new series, later series 10 with Dr. Falls and World Enough in Time. Maybe include that Mondasian design, or perhaps go for 2. I think I'm not going to be too upset whatever they go with, really. What about you?
A part of me feels like they do like a one-off Cyberman design, because looking at the poster for the actual film, it does have this very striking sort of robot creature, and I feel like they're very much leaning to that in some way. So I wouldn't mind like a one-off Cyberman design.
Yeah. Good thing we get a individual cover for it as well.
I know, enjoyed the individual cover art while we've got it, really.
Yeah, Cyberman will definitely end up on the main cover as well, no doubt there. But yeah, individual cover too, that'll be exciting.
I mean, a part of me feels like Big Finish in a way, sort of like a checklist. And a part of me feels like they do Revenge of the Cybermen, and that's the head, what's in Van Statten's museum.
Yeah, perhaps.
But then I don't think Nick Briggs has voiced the Revenge Cybermen yet. I mean, there's always a first, hand on hips intensify, but, we'll see if that happens.
I mean, you could always get away with including that design and just using the invasion style voice, because it's not like they've ever been 100% authentic with their voices a lot of the time anyways. Like I think the invasion one in particular has changed quite a bit from the invasion itself to all the Big Finish stories it's turned up in. I think isn't the new series design that they use in Cyber Reality, the unit story, that the voice doesn't quite really match anything that we have in the new series itself.
That's a weird mishmash, that is. That's a weird mishmash of like an invasion meets sort of an 80s Cyberman, really, and sort of 10th Planet. It's sort of got like a sing-song rhythm to it, but it's sort of got the modulation of what you'd see in one of the older Cybermen, really, than what you'd get in Nightmare in Silver or Capaldi era sort of Cybermen, what's on the cover.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when it comes to like Daleks being on the cover of something. You're always going to get a very similar style voice, and you're always going to have like that movement sound to it from the new series.
Yeah, you know what you're going to get with a Dalek, don't you? Whereas with Cybermen, I think that's the exciting thing when we do get a Cyberman story. It's like out of time. We're all, theorizing what Cyberman's going to be on the cover.
Yeah, got to get that cover soon.
Oh, fingers crossed we do, because it's, out very soon, really.
Yeah, 2 months away now. But yeah, like the Daleks, it's always around about the same voice. Like it's changed over the years, certainly. But with Nick Briggs voicing them, I think he often goes for something quite similar. Like the modulation is slightly different, but overall it's much more similar than it is with the Cybermen, where you have the 10th Planet voice instantly recognizable versus the Tomb voice versus what we get later on. And then, obviously the David Banks 80s Cyberman voice, it's all very different compared to rather similar style of Dalek voice through the years.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, we've got a comment saying, I'd love to see 10 meet the 80s Cybermen and end up coming out of time. I mean, that'd be quite cool, but I don't think David Banks has been announced. I mean, he could be out of time.
I think it's Nick Briggs they've confirmed. So
okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's got Peter Davison in there, so you never know.
I mean, that'd be a nice sort of blend, wouldn't it, of two eras meet, really?
Yeah. I mean, he has done the 80s Cybermen before, hasn't he? Nick?
Yeah, he's done it in like the Reaping and the Gathering, I think. Yeah, definitely the Reaping and the Ultimate Adventure, the adaptation of that as well.
Yeah, it is Nick Briggs in the cast of Out of Time 2.
So okay, it's still
a possibility there.
Yeah, it's not out of the window. But going back to the Ninth Doctor as well, we've got the Brigadier John Coleshaw. Again, it's been done in the Titan comics, but this is the official one because it's an audio, and we can actually enjoy. Well, I guess we can enjoy the comic, but this is going to hit differently, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely is.
I for one am very excited for this after unit dating, and I'm glad that the Brig's getting more love out there. I feel like we're making up for lost time, but it's wonderful. I feel like John Coleshaw does a marvelous job. I'm always going to praise John Coleshaw's Brigadier because it is phenomenal, and I'm sure that him and Chris are going to have a great spark. And I think that Chris is really going to get the detail of, okay, this is an important character in the Doctor Who mythos. So I feel like Chris is very tentative in that sort of stuff. So I feel like it's going to be a very heartwarming thing, and especially the Ninth Doctor coming off the Time War and meeting up with a soldier. I think that's going to be quite an interesting dynamic, really.
Yeah, I think we don't know how much he's going to be in, do we? I'd assume it's just one story based on how to describe it. Perhaps a two-parter. It's confirmed that we are going to be getting a two-parter somewhere in these Ninth Doctor adventures. Thanks to Nick Briggs on the podcast. Roy Gill writing as well, back from Unit Dating. We both loved that. So I am excited to have Roy Gill writing for the Ninth Doctor, seeing what he can do there with him and the Brigadier again. Because he wrote some wonderful scenes between the two back there in Unit Dating, but Eighth Doctor and Brigadier then. And so expanding that to a whole story with the Ninth Doctor instead, that could be some very touching moments.
I think Roy Gill is just like the perfect person for like quiet character moments. And I think that this, I have high hopes for it. I have high hopes for Nine and Brig.
Yeah, same. It's going to be, well, we've got to wait until about a year for it next February, but I'm very excited at what we can get from that. And we still got quite a lot of mysteries surrounding the Ninth Doctor adventures. Like there are at least 9 stories we don't know about. Is that? No, 8, 7 even. Sorry, my maths is way off there.
Well, we don't know anything about Volume 2 thus far. At the time this is going out. So it's a bit like Dalek Universe, that they sort of forget the middle chunk, I guess, of a box set of a series. We get the details of the first and the last, but we don't really know what's going on in the middle, really.
No, like we got the cover reveal, and that's about it for that one. Whereas Ninth Doctor, we don't even have a cover yet. Yeah,
we've got barely anything to get excited about Volume 2. I'm sure it's going to be exciting because it's Eccleston.
Yeah.
I think that wraps up the Ninth Doctor news, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I think we've covered him enough now.
So let's move on to good old Tom Baker, the main Doctor of this Big Finish fans. So we had the announcement last week that Philip Hinchcliffe Presents range is being revived for one story so far called God of Phantoms, which is going to be released in August, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite soon, not too far away. Which is, well, we'll talk about that later, actually. But yeah, it's exciting to have it that soon.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of feels really out of the blue, this announcement, because a few weeks ago, the Philip Hinchcliffe stuff was on clearance. So you're like, okay, that range is, put to bed. It's done.
Yeah, they've said it quite a few times as well that, we don't have any more plans for Philip Hinchcliffe at the moment. I think they've never officially buried the range, but yeah, like you say, it feels like it's had its time. It was back in 2017, the last one came out. And then this all of a sudden.
And a 6-parter as well. So it's a nice little change, a nice little breath of fresh air, really, with it being a 6-parter, because it's very few and far between. Maybe with this relaunch, we'll get the 6-parters or different style lengths of stories, but this is definitely an intriguing one. So is this a pickup for you?
Absolutely. I think Even though I have had a lot of problems with the Philip Hinchcliffe Presents box set so far.
Mainly the price.
Yeah, that too. But even the stories themselves, like a lot of them haven't quite worked for me, or had some really strong moments, but then gone downhill towards the end or something. I mean, it's the same team working on it, Philip and Mark Platt. Even then, I'm still a sucker for this range. Like, it's one of my favorite eras in Doctor Who. I've just got to go for it, really, haven't I? And cheaper price as well this time around. Like, rather than
and a slipcover.
Yeah, but they've thankfully made it a bit easier on the wallet, so I can justify diving in. And then if I am disappointed again, well, at least I haven't lost quite as much money. But I think as well, like, it's just exciting to have this combination together, and it's their fifth one they've done together. Surely you got to hit the nail on the head eventually.
So I think ever since sort of the first box set, which though it's a high price, and if it's ever on sale, do pick it up because I think that's the best that range has to offer so far.
Yeah.
Whereas the sort of dual case releases, there's some good ideas there, but I don't think they're fully realized. Because I love Helm of War with the world building, with sort of the Isle of Skye and all that sort of stuff, and the whole Viking sort of festival around it. That's really interesting, but it kind of loses that sort of very quickly.
Half,
yeah, very quickly.
It sort of all feels a bit weird and messy. And yeah, like even there's so much thick atmosphere in that first box set, those two stories. There's some wonderful stuff. The first 4 parts of The Ghosts of Grousestead is absolutely incredible. Like, even though it's a bit of a Talons Wintrang pastiche going back into the Victorian era, it's still something magical to behold. But then it sort of loses itself quite a bit in those final 2 parts for me.
I think it's part 5 where it just randomly decides to change location just for the sake of the story. When you've got this rich, Victorian atmosphere, like you said, and Doctor Who's always been a show what Magpie's ideas. So I'm fine with it sort of doing a Talons of Weng-Chiang because I guess it's authentic to the era.
Yeah, and it does it differently as well. Like, it's exploring some different things of grave robbers, these ancient, almost godlike creatures, this influence on this family, and then you've also got like the what is the setting? It's been a while since I listened. It's like
a freak show.
Oh yeah, you got the freak show as well. But I'm more thinking of like you have that Doctor Who, like when the bodies are dug up, they're taken to experiment on. Like, even though you've obviously got the mortuary in Talons of as well. Well, is it? No, it's not called a mortuary, is it? In Talons, at least. What's it called? Where Lightfoot works.
It's just the back of the police, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just the back of
just the autopsy room. Yeah. Maybe it is a mortuary. Who knows?
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. But so it's a very different style of it, even though they are both in Talons and Ghosts of Grousestead. It's got a very different feel to it, much more sinister. And but this story itself, I'm intrigued by the synopsis. The idea of like people being haunted by this ghost on this alien planet. It's like it still seems to have that gothic horror vibe to it, which I think was lost in Genesis Chamber and Helm of War. Helm of War sort of felt more like a 12 or 13 style story in many ways.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, but this looks like it's returning to that with ghosts of like relatives coming back and then people being taken away. I think it's going to be interesting, and getting to explore that world for 6 episodes will be fun as well.
I think one thing I would like to see, if the Philip Hinchcliffe range does continue, that we branch out to Sarah Jane or Sarah Jane and Harry.
Definitely.
I think that would definitely pique a few more people's ears up into that range, because it is a good range from what there is. But I think that it's always nice to have a little bit of change of pace and a little new breath of life into a range, really.
Yeah, I think especially this year as well, coming off of first 2 months, we've had Tom and Leela, and then March, we did switch it up a bit. We got Sarah, Harry, and then Romana and K9 all together. Not all together, but all in the same month on the same day. Those 2 different stories. Then we're going back to Leela, getting K9. And then we're getting Leela again. Part of me did hope when I saw that announcement initially of Philip Hinchcliffe returning was, is it going to be Sadie Miller so we can have something just a bit different? And then there was a bit of disappointment that it's Leela, but I'm still excited to see what the release has to offer. But yeah, fingers crossed, next story, if there is another one, we get Sarah in there.
It almost seems a bit of a shame that they aren't using Sarah and Harry sooner, because I feel like Return of the Cybermen is that release where it's sort of testing the waters. What do people make of it? But obviously, Sarah's been confirmed for the 3rd Doctor, and Harry's in unit. So it seems a bit of a shame that we've got Return, but we don't know when we're going to get that TARDIS team back in full, really.
Yeah, it's almost like I would personally prefer it to be just Sarah, really, because I think that's very much what a lot of the Hinchcliffe era is anyway, and it's something that we are yet to explore. Like we've had Sarah and Harry together in Return now. What we haven't had yet is just a Sarah story. So I'd be intrigued as to what they could do with that.
I mean, I'm sort of intrigued if they go back and revisit some of the original 4th Doctor scripts when Tom joined Big Finish, because we had like Sarah and the Brig.
Yeah.
So could we see those stories make a final, see the light of day, really?
I do want, because I wonder how many of those did end up just getting turned into stories we've already gotten now. Because I think a lot of the Sarah stuff was adapted into Leela stuff for series 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends how much of that is still lying around, but that's definitely some ideas I'd love for them to revisit, like the 4th Doctor and Brig together. Get on that for season or series 14, maybe.
Well, I mean, we're a long way off.
Don't announce it just yet, though.
Yeah, they'll announce it sooner or later. But speaking of other 4th Doctor announcements, we're going to get some extra Tom, which is always wonderful. With Series 11 and Series 12 with Leela and Margaret, first teased in Companion Piece in Ravenous Free.
Yeah, 2019? Yeah, April 2019, that would have been.
Gosh.
Yeah, and I think even then we had the announcement not long after, didn't we?
Yeah.
They've been recording them for, I think they were recorded back in 18 and 19 for the most part, these stories. But before that even, Series 11, we get introduced to Margaret for a one-off story as a one-off companion, but she's not actually back alongside Tom and Leela until 12. So, what do you make of those 2 new stories? They have Peak Season and The Ghost of Margaret.
They seem very interesting. They see. I think isn't Roy Gill doing one of them?
No, I think Tim Foley's doing Ghost of Margaret and Lisbeth Miles is doing Peak Season.
I mean, they're both brilliant writers, so I think they do a wonderful job, and it's nice to see different writers in the 4th Doctor range. No disrespect to the writers we've had before, but it's always good to have new blood into a range because it gives their take on how they perceive an era of Doctor Who. The only downside really is that we've lost the individual cover art, but an extra story, you win some, you lose some, really.
Yeah, same price as well, at least for these 2 series. They haven't hiked it up with the addition of a new one, so we can't complain too much there. Just got to hope that the main cover art that we do get instead is crisp and top quality.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's also, they've shifted the release dates back now. It used to be January and February. Now it's March and June. So I think that almost makes me happy that we do have Philip Hinchcliffe in August now, because it sort of makes up for that added wait time.
I mean, we've definitely been spoilt with Tom since December. Yeah. We've been on sort of a Tom
marathon. It's not over yet.
No, it's. I mean, for us, definitely not with Series 3 whacked in there as well. We've definitely been enjoying our Tom, and I think the last bit of news we've got with Tom was Alan Turing's going to be in Series 13, alongside in the box set with the Sea Devils.
Yeah, and then you have even more stories announced. Don't let me just get that up. No real details yet of any of them, I don't think. So we've got Storm of the Sea Devils by David K. Barnes, and then Worlds Apart by Robert Kahn and Tom Zielinski. They've been a writing partnership for some time. I think they've done a Fourth Doctor one before, haven't they?
I don't think it's out yet. I think they have done one before, but I don't think we've yet to listen to it yet.
Yeah, I remember. They did Revelli Conspiracy and Entanglement.
And Kingdom of Lies as well.
Yeah. So this is their first foray into the Fourth Doctor adventures. It looks like a bit more of a serious tale. Like those ones are quite serious as well, but they've also got heavy elements of comedy, particularly Kingdom of Lies. So
I still think you're going to get comedy because it's
definitely. Tom. Yeah, but not in the same style, I don't think. Like going to Alan Turing and stuff, I think it will be a bit... I mean, I can't say for certain they could go an all-out comedy with it. They haven't said exactly what it's going to be yet, but I feel like it'll be a different style to those ones we've had before, which is always good.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then we have Matryoshka by Aurora Fernley, I believe, and writer completely new to Big Finish, although given that this isn't out until 2023 or 2024 even, we'll probably have heard something else from her before then.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get at least, another Doctor before. It's like Robert Valentine, he seems to have like all manner of releases over the past year. He seems becoming quite a big regular for Big Finish, and he's produced some really good stuff.
Yeah. The Caged Assassin by Matthew Sweet, for his first time writing for the Fourth Doctor, and also his first time writing for the show for Big Finish, since Jacob and Lightfoot series 13.
I mean, Matthew Sweet's a very interesting writer. He's sort of a writer where it's take it or leave it. He's very sort of out there with his writing. You've just got to look at Year of the Pig and Magic Mousetrap. Very, very odd story. So if you like a bit of a different flavor of Doctor Who, then Matthew Sweet might be an interesting writer for you.
Yeah, and I imagine that's just going to be a two-parter slotted in there. So if you don't like it as much, at least it doesn't take up too much of your time. It'll be, yeah. I remember I wasn't too fond of his series 11 story for Jago and Lightfoot. I remember that one being a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, he's very much sort of, he can take it or leave his writing, really.
Yeah.
I guess he's one of those writers where you've got to be in the mood to listen to his stories, I think.
And then capping off volume 2 is Metamorphosis by Lisa McMullen. It's a solid writer. She's been doing some Stranded stuff, hasn't she?
Yeah, she's been doing quite a bit with the Eighth Doctor. So yeah, she's a good writer. Yeah. I do like her stuff.
Looking forward to seeing what she could do with the Fourth Doctor. The Face in the Storm by Sarah Grochala, I believe. If that is how it's pronounced. I'm very sorry if I've got that wrong. But yeah, she is writing an upcoming First Doctor and First Doctor Adventure story. I believe it is the William Shakespeare one. And she has
the Hollow Crown, is it?
Yeah. She's done some stuff for the robots before as well, which I quite enjoyed her story there. So
okay.
Intrigued as to what that could be. The Face in the Storm. Another storm here. We've got Storm of the Sea Devils and the Face in the Storm.
Maybe it's like an ongoing thing for that series. It's just the monster is the storm.
And then Dominant Species by John Dorney, which I theorise to you could be a Daleks and maybe even Davros story, just purely on the basis that there is that line in Genesis of the Daleks where Davros says about having the Daleks being the dominant species. It's the only way they can survive. And so reading that's just the first thing that popped into my head. I could be wrong, could be something completely different. What do you make of it?
I think there's definitely room for a Davros story. But again, the Fourth Doctor Adventures has always been out there with continuity. Like the story we're going to talk about next, King of Sontar. The Fourth Doctor's never been afraid to go, well, it happened in his era, but let's put a little twist on it. So I feel like we'll get maybe a little Davros. I think I've said it to you that they've been quite good with the Daleks and the Fourth Doctor, because I feel like the Daleks would be a big thing with Tom's Doctor, but they've used them sparingly, so they do feel like an occasion when they do pop up with the Fourth Doctor. So
Yeah,
it's what, 3 years down the line. So I think I could see it being another Dalek story.
Yeah, and in the series itself, they haven't used them since series 2. Like they had them in 1, then 2, and then we had a big jump. Next, it was Out of Time, which is this special release also with the 10th Doctor, so it has a different quality to it. There was the Time Lord Victorious one you picked up.
Yeah.
What was the title of that?
Genetics of the Daleks.
Ah, yeah, that's a clever, witty little title. And now we've got A Time with Dalek Universe next up with the Dalek contract. So even though they have been used quite a bit over the last year, it's still stuff that's separate from the range itself.
Yeah, I think that's the good little differentiate with that, really.
Yeah. Plus, it's Harry and a new companion, so it's not like we're redoing Fourth Doctor and Leela versus Daleks or Fourth Doctor and Romana versus Daleks. It's something a bit newer.
Yeah, and obviously we don't really know how Naomi's going to react to a Dalek or Davros.
If she hopefully does get to meet him.
And I think as well, the Fourth Doctor and Davros have such a different dynamic to any of the Doctors and Davros because they're both scientists. So I feel like there's a mutual respect there, especially after the interrogation scene, and they're just sitting there, just talking. And obviously, when you get to Destiny, it's a completely different Doctor and Davros, isn't it? Really? Yeah, he's literally gonna throw a bomb down his little chair. So I feel like there should be a story in between explaining, well, why does the Doctor want to, put a bomb down Davros's chair?
Yeah. Well, he did switch off his life support before.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Davros and the Doctor. I mean, Capaldi's just as bad, really. Just putting him out of his chair.
Taking it for a joyride.
Yeah.
That comes to the end of
the news.
So we can a lot of Fourth Doctor news, wasn't there? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if more comes out next week. All of a sudden, like a Series 14 announcement.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably have to do a little Series 14 stream then, I guess. Yeah. Here's this coming out.
Yeah, they've just thrown so much at us. It's like they knew we were going to be looking back at Series 3, so I thought it'd be fitting to give them some Fourth Doctor news to mull over.
Yeah, we start off with Series 3, and we're finally diving into it now with The King of Sontar, written by John Dorney. Like I said, it deals with Leela obviously has seen a Sontaran in Invasion of Time, but the story features some very unique Sontarans, as these are Sontarans without armor, and we have the Great Sontar edition of Strang, which is basically a 7-foot Sontaran, basically made of an entire battalion of Sontarans, isn't it, Strang?
Yeah, it's all the mixed up together, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, like you brought that make your own set of cupcakes mix from the shop. You've put it all together, and then instead of pouring it into the little cupcake holders and making 12 and whatever, you've bunged it all in one little cake dish and stuck it in the oven, and you got this big cake for yourself instead.
I mean, I think that's a perfect analogy for Strang, really. I've never thought of that.
I think that also makes sense for why the Sontarans come out differently as well, because some of the cakes are closer to the side of the oven or the back of the oven. They get a bit more exposure to heat. Sometimes you put a little bit more or a little bit less in, so they never all come out exactly the same. And different batches come out even differently. You have different strengths of the mix, so that is why, even though it's all the same batter, it's all the same DNA that make all the clones, they all come out ever so slightly different, don't they?
When I woke up this morning, I never thought I'd be talking about Sontarans and cake batter together in the same sentence. But you know what? We're here. We're thriving. We're living for it.
Oh, I swear, back in the day when you did your Doctor Who Dalek biscuits, didn't you?
I regret doing that because my stomach hated it.
Did they do like Sontarans or something like that?
I think there was like a Sontaran like cookie cutter, biscuit cutter, whatever you want to say. or like
potato
a chocolate
cutter.
thing. I mean, perfect. I mean, yeah. Let's have some Sontaran chips.
But yeah, I swear, like you had those weird like sticker thing, those edible stickers that you put on the top, and it was made out of icing. You could put them on the top of your cup. I swear they did Sontaran ones then, maybe.
Yeah, I can see it in my head. I definitely know what you're on about with that.
Yeah, who knows? Like, it's just that little twist to make the cupcakes into Doctor Who cupcakes, even though really it's just a regular cupcake mix with a little sticker on top.
I mean, it works. You see it. It's like the Doctor Who, like spaghetti stuff. Like you bought it because there's like Dalek spaghetti. You know, but hey, it works. Where's our Pating spaghetti? We don't see that now. Come on, give us that. So I guess go back to King of Sontar. I think this is a really good series opener. I think that this is a wonderful series opener. We see the Time Lords. I mean, this is sort of a theme with like the first two stories in a way, that the Time Lords send the Doctor and Leela on a bit of an errand, really.
Yeah, they're two very closely linked stories, aren't they, in more ways than that? But I suppose we'll talk about that more when we get on to White Ghost itself. But yeah, it's very much feels like Genesis of the Daleks for the Sontarans in some ways.
Especially at the end when we're at the vat and Leela's sort of going, well, we've got to blow it up, haven't we?
Yeah, it's a very different do I have the right speech. It's much more challenging and very personal to the Fourth Doctor and Leela, in that she feels like even if they don't have the right, it's their responsibility to do this, just in case, you know, much worse things can happen. And so, like, being all high-handed with your morals and being the better person doesn't matter when lives are at stake, and that's how Leela sees it. And so takes the plunge, and has a bit of a fallout with the Doctor because of it.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of starts the series arc of Series 3, because these stories are all standalone. Everything prior to this, we had the occasional two-parter like Trail of the White Worm and the Aside Adventure, and then Sands of Life, Sands of Time, isn't it? And War Against Valan, Dalek Contract, Final Phase. This is more of a series focusing on the characters, isn't it? It's more of a character journey. So, what do you make of this sort of? I mean, I guess this is the first series written up for Leela and the Fourth Doctor. So
yeah, that's true.
It is very much beginning. Let's teach Leela the wonders of the universe and a bit more about Earth's history and the culture, what she descends from, really.
I think it's very much what Big Finish do, isn't it? Like, they take things from the TV series that were there, sometimes surface level, sometimes not even that, and really diving and exploring them, making these characters more fully rounded. And while they've done that with Leela in some Companion Chronicles and Gallifrey, this is their first time to properly do that with the Fourth Doctor and their relationship together, now that Tom Baker had come back to Big Finish. And so they really got to dive into that. And I think whereas Series 10, for example, we've got these 4 parts, it feels very true to the era. It's a series that you can easily move the stories around, listen to them, all 4 of them in any order, and it wouldn't make any difference. Here, you can listen to the stories all individually just fine, but you get much more out of going start to finish with them, listening to all that. And Series 10 is a series which features the Fourth Doctor and Leela, and has moments that are written for them very strongly. I don't want to sound like I'm overly criticizing Series 10. I did enjoy that a lot, but when you compare that to Series 3, this isn't just a series which features the Fourth Doctor and Leela. It's a series about the Fourth Doctor and Leela, about their dynamic, about Leela's growth through time, traveling with the Doctor, about her grief over her father, and about what she's learned about her education with the Doctor, and how that has changed her as a person, and in some ways how she is still true to herself, being a savage, and how sometimes that's not always a bad thing.
I think especially in King of Sontar, the savageness works for her advantage, because she is very much leading a rebellion against Strang and the lead scientist, David Collins' character, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas you sort of, I love
can't
how
remember his name.
I can't remember the name either. Terrible. I love how we sort of get the backstory while sort of changing from Leela and Velhal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, very interesting Sontaran character as well, because he's a dishonored Sontaran, not like Strax. And that's quite an interesting moment where you sort of, well, not a flashback, but you get the history of it. He begged for his life against Strang because he was like, there's no honor in the death what Strang gave the other Sontarans, really.
Yeah, I was thinking the Starry, but that's two doctors. I've looked it up another Sontaran story. I've looked at it's Rosato who David Collins played. There's a nice kinship between Wilhol and Leela, isn't there? The other Sontaran, and you thought it's a nice relationship how they start off at each other's throats, and he's very dismissive of her, but in the end, you know, it's a very emotional scene at the end between the two, I think. That hit me harder than I was expecting. Like I remembered it was coming more or less. Like I knew he didn't make out of the story. But God, it hits very hard, and I think that's something I'm not quite as used to with some of the more recent stuff. I mean, who was Thaddeus Nook and what's her name in that story?
Is it? I want to say Jess, but I don't think it's
Jess.
Jess.
Yeah, it's Jess. Yeah, I was quite moved by them, but this was something just even more hard hitting for me. And yeah, I just wasn't expecting it, but God, it does still hit you even after all this time.
I feel like I appreciate that scene a lot more now. Because I feel like I said, we've all mellowed in age, and I think we can appreciate finer character moments. Because I think when I first listened to it, just like, where's the action? I want action. And this story does have plenty of action. You know, right from the beginning, you've got like an elite assassination squad trying to assassinate Strang. And I love that twist about who's leading the actual sort of society on this world. But it's not Rosato, it's Strang, which I think was a nice little twist within it.
Yeah. And that also led to quite a fun action scene where he takes out all the Sontaran squad in one go.
I mean, that was a brilliant moment when he just sort of ricocheted his blaster and managed to get all the Sontarans. It's incredible.
Yeah. I think going back to the moment with Wilhol as well, what works so strongly about that is, as we've listened to Rosato over this story, we do come to quite like him, and David Collins himself is a great actor there, so I think that aids in that quite a bit. And yeah, obviously he then kills Wilhol, and even though he is quite a despicable character, Rosato, in some ways, you still connect with him in others. Like, he is a scientist who wants to do the right thing, but has sort of lost his way a bit and believes the end justifies the means, which Leela then ends up believing with her actions at the end of the story. But there's something in that moment after he kills Wilhol, I think it's something that wouldn't work with any other companion other than Leela, where you truly believe she could just wreck him, like absolutely kill him brutally over that death. Whereas with any other companion, it wouldn't. You can imagine them being extremely upset over it and having a few harsh words to say, but there's no companion who you believe would want to kill them and actually would go through with it as well. And that's something about the danger of Leela in some ways, about her savage upbringing, that adds that extra layer of tension to that scene on top of the emotion you're feeling.
I think that this is the most Leela series of Fourth Doctor adventures out there. Definitely. I think if you love Leela, this is the series you want to listen to, because it has so many wonderful things for her. Because I remember, you know, when I did my little notes for each stories, I always noted down, oh, that was a really nice moment for Leela and the Doctor. Like, this is just wonderful stuff between those two characters, really.
What did you think of Tom Baker's voice as well in this? Because one thing that threw me off compared to the later series is that his voice sounds quite different. I'm not sure if maybe he had a cold on the day or something. Because
See, I noticed a change in Last of a Colophon. I think that's when I was like, it doesn't really sound like it. I mean, it sounds like Tom, but it sounds like he's a bit ill. But when I was listening, because I recently was listening to Doomsday Contract and Return of the Cybermen, like Tom's voice, I wouldn't say he's mellowed, but it's not as booming as it used to.
Yeah, it feels like he's become more comfortable in some ways as well.
Yeah, and I think listening to this, it sort of felt like I was listening to like a missing episode soundtrack in a way, because it did seem like Tom you would get in the 70s. It did feel very sort of classic Tom in a way. So I didn't really feel a problem with Tom's voice in this series in particular. I mean, I don't have a problem with Tom's voice in general.
No, it's not a problem with it. Just a observation, I guess.
But again, I think this was probably recorded, 2013, maybe 2012, maybe.
18th of July 2012 was King of Sontar.
So we're nearly 10 years on from that with Tom. So it's crazy. But his voice is still distinctive and brilliant as ever, really.
Yeah, it's still recognisable and obviously Tom, but I don't know, something about it did feel a bit different to me. And
I guess maybe because we've just been used to Series 10, like I wouldn't say grew up with the Fourth Doctor Big Finish, but we've become so used to what Tom sounds like in the recent stuff.
Along. Yeah. So we don't notice the subtle change over time, but then when you do go back, it hits you a bit harder. I remember some of even earlier ones than this. I remember it feels like he's trying too hard to be younger. He's not just letting himself be the character as such, whereas I think over time he did learn to just ease up a bit and just go with it.
I feel like there's maybe like the odd moment in this series where he still has that sort of moment, especially in like the evil one when he's going down like the chute or something like that. He sort of has like the Yahoo or whatever it is. Like there's still sort of that playing up to it, but I feel like you can get away with that because that's Tom. That's just Tom in general, really.
Yeah. In general, what do you make of King of Sontar? Because I feel like we've been discussing the minutiae quite a bit.
I mean, I think it's probably my favorite of the 8.
Oh, really?
I think I really enjoyed this one. I think that, like I said, the character moment, Strang, was wonderful, really nice, beautifully placed for a 2-parter. Like I was sort of interested to go back to 2-part Fourth Doctor stories because we've become quite accustomed to the 4-parters now. So it was quite interesting to see where it began for the Fourth Doctor in that sense. But I really, really enjoyed it. Great stuff within it, and I highly recommend. And maybe in my top 10 Fourth Doctor Big Finish stories. I mean, I remember listening to this when I was, getting into Big Finish. So I feel like that probably has a little advantage point within it. And it's probably the story I'm most familiar with of the bunch. It's probably the one I've listened to the most. And
yeah, probably same for me.
I think I'll probably give it a 9 out of 10. I just really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd say for me, well, it was my first Big Finish actually, and it's got that nostalgia for that as well. But also, it's not just the road to tinted glasses. I do think it is a very strong story, a very strong start. Like I said, it has those shades of Genesis of the Daleks in there. It's much more Philip Hinchcliffe style than Invasion of Time is, with the other Fourth Doctor leader Sontaran story, which I almost forget exists sometimes because it's not one I go back to that often.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. It's action-packed. It's got some brilliant ideas in there, some great performances. And yeah, I love the 2-part format throughout this series. I think it suits it quite well with the more character-focused stories, and also allows a lot of these stories to have those stronger character moments because it will like carry on over the course of the series. It's not like everything character-based has to be started, explored, and then dealt with by the end of one story. Stuff can sort of like be seeded in there and then carried on later. And so it's a lot of fun, this story, and it's not just fun and action packed. It has some important moments behind it as well, and some quite touching ones too. So I'll go 9 out of 10 as well. I'll join you for that one.
Okay. I mean, one thing what I love about is the ending of the story. That there's this great scene in the TARDIS console that the Doctor's like, "Well,
yeah.
haven't I taught you anything?" Like, there's a great sorrow. It's like either I'm a bad teacher or you're just not listening.
Yeah.
And that plays into our next story, White Ghost, where we see the Doctor drop Leela off back home. What I find quite interesting with White Ghost is there seems to be like a gap between King of Sontar and White Ghost. It seems like there's been at least a few days. Leela's been learning to read and learn fairy tales and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, she never gets dropped off back home.
I just thought she was dropped off back home at the end of it, really.
No, because I think at the end of King of Sontar.
Yeah.
I think he says that he's going to do that, and I think she storms off into the TARDIS.
Oh, I just thought she was like, "Oh yeah, you go outside those doors, and I'll wait." I just thought she was like, "Go on, up you go," and then that was it. Really.
I'm not sure, especially based off what happens later in the stories. Like, we have moments where Leela mentions being homesick.
Okay, that does make sense. I mean, I've always thought it was like, "Oh, I'm just going to take you back. Think about your actions, and then come back on a board when you're ready." Really.
I thought of it more as, I will, if I'm going to take you back, if that's what you think you need. And then she sort of goes off into the TARDIS to think about whether she is right. Because I think they do have the talk at the start of the story where she says, "I do feel it's right. I don't want to go home." Or she's gone into the library by that point. So what I took it, and especially because the Doctor's hunting for her as well, isn't he? Like, through the TARDIS.
Yeah, the start of White Ghost. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I took it more as she went off into the TARDIS and then went in the library for a bit, and that's when she did her thinking. That's when she did her reading up on it, and then the Doctor eventually started looking after he thought, "I've given her enough time to think about it now."
Yeah. So what do you make of White Ghost as a story? Because I feel like it's one of those sort of, I wouldn't say forgotten ones, but it's like when you think of series 3 of the Fourth Doctor, you sort of think King of Sontar, Crooked Man. You sort of forget about the one in between, really.
It's one of those ones that I think a lot of people do look over, but it's one of my favorites, I will admit. Okay. I really do love a lot of the concepts of this, and revisiting it as well this time. I feel like the first time I listened, I felt like some parts were a bit rushed and it didn't explore them enough. But actually, looking back, I think it does a good job of it. I think maybe there's some little parts that could have done with a bit more, but it doesn't harm my experience overall for them not to be. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff there where they're going far away from the heart of the universe, like in these deep, dark corners.
Well, they're on the edge of the universe, aren't they?
Yeah.
They make quite a big deal of that.
Yeah, like there's no sunlight here, and you have these extreme, I think it's extremophiles, isn't it? Like creatures that live in the most hostile of conditions. And so there's some great concepts there with these plants that can only sprout for they get like 10 minutes of sunlight every,
I think it's
years.
Like every 1,014 years there's like an eclipse where the asteroid becomes a jungle, isn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, just because these species have so little time to sprout, they manage to grow very quickly and then even produce their own light eventually, which is obviously something that people don't really want happening because of how carnivorous they are. If they were to be taken back and then land on another planet, they would utterly consume it, similar to the crinoid.
Yeah, it's like the spores go off and all hell breaks loose. But I think that's quite an interesting idea with the story, because we're so used to stories like, stay out the dark, stay out the shadows, or like the Vashta Narada. But whereas the light isn't your friend in this, and you've got the imminent danger of like a missile and like this flare. There's a lot going on with it.
Yeah, it's also it's something that's ideally suited to audio, isn't it? Like being in the dark.
Oh, definitely with one of the supporting characters, like with the bat eyes, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, I love the bleakness and emptiness of it as well. There's some wonderful music in it that sort of feels a bit like some stuff in Impossible Planet, like the more ambient stuff.
Yeah, very string music. Yeah, see that.
Yeah, and I think it paints this beautiful picture of, like you say, the edge of the universe. It really does go a long way to helping the story. And I love the atmosphere of this one and all those ideas for the setting. I think it's stuff that comes together brilliantly. And it's a shame that it's not as often talked about as it is, and that it does get a bit forgotten.
I might be in a bit of disagreement with you here.
Go for it.
I think that it probably compacts a little bit too much within the story itself, especially when you get the introduction of is it like the Reapers, like the Grim Reapers, something along. I feel like that feels so not out the blue, but it just feels like, okay, why are we doing this in the story? Like I like the sound design, like that scream is like
that's brilliant,
really chilling. But I just feel like it tries to compact stuff, and then the supporting cast turn out to be vampires or whatever. So I feel like it's just throwing everything at you, and you're like, okay, and it doesn't seem to gel, especially when you sort of get to sort of the ending in a way.
Yeah, I will admit the ending's a bit rushed, where it's like, don't leave us here in the dark, and then we have this triumphant music as the Doctor goes off with Leela. I think that's one weak part for me, but I feel that's certainly how I felt like before I came back to this, like remembering how I felt about it. I agree that it was more along the lines of, this is a bit of a twist too far with the Reapers for me. But on this listen, I enjoyed it much more. And like there is that setup with the far fields and the idea of crop rotation and such. And again, that ties into Leela quite nicely, in that the 17 weren't just warriors, they were farmers. It's a nice little character moment that you don't really think about, but adds a lot to her and like her knowledge. And yet, speaking of the characters who know about the stuff in the far fields, they're played by James Joyce, one at Candeli. And that's a like funny one, because when we first listened to this, I imagine we both thought nothing of it. But now he's gone on to play quite a few big characters, like in the Unit series. Who is Josh Carter? Like he's played that role, and he's done quite a few others as well, hasn't he? So that was just something funny that I picked up while listening to it. That it's like when
he doesn't last long.
No, that's true. He plays the Harvesters as well, but that's very heavily modulated and different.
But yeah, I think that there's some really good concepts, like you say, and I do enjoy it. I do enjoy White Ghost, and I think that it does have some interesting stuff to offer, especially the White Ghosts themselves, really.
Yeah, there's just so much fascinating stuff in there. Maybe a bit rushed. Like, I think it's funny because it's the shortest of the season, I think, isn't it? The series.
Part 1 felt very quick.
Yeah, like I think the cliffhanger's in the perfect place, to be fair.
Oh, but I'm not complaining that,
yeah. But you could easily extend part 2, especially because you have the extra disc space there with the shorter part 1.
I think that's maybe what the story needed, like an extra 5 minutes or something, just to introduce some of those concepts a little bit more solidly. But still, I enjoyed it. So what would you rate White Ghost as it's one of your favourites?
Rose tinted glasses makes me want to go for a 9, but I think I'll reel myself back and stick with an 8 for this one. How about you?
Do you know what? I'm in agreement. I'm going to go for an 8 as well.
Oh, wow.
I'll go for an 8. I did enjoy it. It's the atmosphere. I feel like, especially with the sort of stuff with the Doctor and Leela in the spacesuits, it's so out there on audio. Like you said, it's a story what can only really be done on audio. So I feel like the story plays to that advantage, like you say.
I would have loved if we got that on the cover. Like, I think that's something they didn't do so much back then, but now that they've evolved much more with how they do their cover art, we could have got like they colorized the moon base spacesuit. So is that how you imagine it? Because there's a mention of like a glass bowl type one, isn't there?
I sort of imagined it like on sort of the is it Phantoms of the Deep, that Fourth Doctor Series 2 cover?
Oh yeah.
I sort of imagined it like that.
That's more of a diving one, isn't it?
Yeah, but the principle's still the same, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I imagined it as more of the moon base one, but the moon base fan in me there coming out, I guess.
I mean, it's a good story. It's a good story.
Yeah, but
I think that's a good little tie into our next story. The moon base in a way, 60s Who and the Crooked Man.
Yeah, tie into sort of a sequel to Mind Robber, isn't it? But at the same time, very different.
It's very much its own thing in its own right with what it does with the land of fiction, which I think is a wonderful idea. This was the first of the series what I experienced. I experienced Crooked Man, then King of Sontar. This was my first story I listened to, and one thing what I love about this story is the atmosphere in part one. The atmosphere is wonderful. It definitely has that sort of chilling, like a out of season, seaside town.
Yeah. Have you listened to the Eve Miles Torchwood story about that?
Which one is that? Made You Look?
Yeah, Made You Look. That's another off-season.
I don't have it. I don't have that one. I should pick it up.
I definitely recommend it. It's the Crooked Man, but because it's Torchwood, it could not the Crooked Man in the land of fiction sense or anything like that, but it's similar in some ways, and because it's Torchwood, it can go that much further. So I'd recommend that if you enjoyed the Crooked Man, like not just you, but also any listeners as well. If you've got the Crooked Man and you enjoyed it, but wanted a bit more out of it, check out Made You Look. There's some great stuff in there. Tortured release. But yeah, sorry for that little segue there.
No, it's absolutely fine. I think the Crooked Man as a monster is wonderful. It's sort of got a bit of a Chimes of Midnight feel in sort of the way it kills people, that he basically stuffed somebody full of book pages, which
is quite gruesome for
and I think it's in like the behind the scenes Nick Briggs sort of toned the Crooked Man back, which I almost feel is a little bit of a shame, because I feel like the Crooked Man's such a really interesting idea. I really wanted them to go all in on this sort of deranged, character, really.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. He's on the cover art there, but he's very almost cartoonish, isn't he? On that cover.
Which works really with what the land of fiction is, I guess.
Yeah, but at the same time, I imagine something in the actual story being much more creepy and much more like flesh, but wrong.
I guess it sort of reminds me of Eldrad, like that sort of jagged sort of diamond look on the cover.
Yeah. I think in the story itself, it's described as something that's it doesn't feel right to look at, I don't think, is how Leela says it.
Yeah. But this story has quite a few twists within it. The land of fiction, the land of fiction sort of becoming warped and distorted, and it needs to get rid of the characters what aren't as memorable as some of the ones that we all know and love and grew up as children with children. So I think that's an interesting idea within it by John Dorney.
Yeah, like the obscure character. Yeah, the obscure characters are coming out to replace you and get you.
Yeah,
I quite like that idea of the exchange as well. Like one person has to die for someone from the land of fiction to come through.
No, that's quite a chilling idea. Yeah. So what do you make of the Crooked Man as a story?
I do, like you say, part one has a lot of good things going for it, and there's some very intense build up to a terrific cliffhanger. Like the sound design in that was breathtaking. I felt my heart racing as we built up to that. Even though I've listened to it before, I know what's coming. It still took me by surprise just how chilling that cliffhanger is. And I think the Crooked Man's voice as well is something extremely sinister. And the way he says, the land of fiction is coming to town. I didn't even try to do that justice.
Yeah.
I just thought,
I mean, that was really... I'm scared. I'm terrified right now.
That was brilliant. And him taking the child at the same time. There's so much going off that cliff in that cliffhanger, with the bookcase bulging, like books coming out of nowhere. And then it sort of goes a bit silly in some ways, where you've got like this troll creature and the knockoff Andy Davison.
Yeah. It almost feels a bit Roald Dahl-esque in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It just feels very sort of Matilda-y in a way. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's a strange one in part 2, as we it becomes a bit of a runaround in some ways. We journey into the land of fiction. Things get a bit weird. And also, it feels almost like a new series story at times.
Like especially with the twist involving the family. That does feel very modern Doctor Who.
And I think it's set in modern times, isn't it? Like, there's no explicit setting for where is this? But I'm pretty sure there must have been a mobile phone in there, maybe.
I don't know about you, but it feels wrong when like you get a classic Doctor in like modern day. It just feels wrong for me listening to. I'm like, no, you shouldn't be in this time, but he's a time traveler, so it does make sense. But for me, it's just like, oh no, I don't like that.
Oh, I did love it in The World Traders, actually, part 1 of that. I think we both really enjoyed. Yeah, I think with the Crooked Man, though, there's something, it almost feels timeless in some ways, but I do feel in others it does feel quite modern, but it never pins it down to that, so I think you could get away with it a bit more.
Yeah, we get sort of I think this whole series is basically the Doctor just wants a bit of a holiday, really. He's like, oh, I'll get you a stick of rock, and the leader's like, people eat rocks for fun? What is this?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I just love that they play into how literal Leela's mind is within this series.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of good moments like that. And yeah, I think there's also a line from the 4th Doctor, like when the police officer's saying about the creatures from the TV story that's meant to be a rip-off of Doctor Who in some way.
Yeah.
And then the Doctor says, you don't have a girlfriend, do you? Or something like that. It's something you can imagine David Tennant maybe saying. It feels almost too on the nose for the 4th Doctor.
Yeah, I see that. I definitely see that.
And also, I can imagine some audience members got a bit offended by that. Oh dear!
But it's Thomas. It's lessons of life.
You've basically just been called a virgin by the 4th Doctor. How do you feel?
Wow, there we go. That's classic Tom. I mean, I wouldn't want to share a towel with Tom, but it's okay.
Yeah, I thought interestingly, this is the only story that's set on Earth, even of the series. Yeah. Like, there's no historicals in here. Actually, it is all either set in a future off-world or spaceship of some kind, or it's set in this, like, a modern day-ish setting.
Yeah.
Which I suppose fits the 4th Doctor era, really, because, to be fair, he doesn't actually have that many historicals.
Yeah, I mean, I always get excited when we do get a historical, like Primeval Designs. That was a sort of a nice change of setting. It's one of those ones what you can picture them doing on screen, really.
Yeah,
that one.
I think a lot of series 3, though, not necessarily.
Yeah, it does feel very much Big Finish 4th Doctor. I would say it's Big Finish knowing what they're doing with Tom now. I feel like the novelty's worn off that they've got Tom.
Yeah, so now they're experimenting a bit more with what they can do with him and Leela.
Oh, definitely. We got anything else to add on Crooked Man, or be finished?
I think. Well, we sort of mentioned it does go a bit downhill in part 2, haven't we? And
part 2.
Even then, feels a bit messy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice that we're exploring that concept, but part 2 just really lets the story down for me personally.
Yeah.
Other than that, if it carried on sort of, the atmosphere and tone of part 1, I could easily say that this would be the best one of the series. But because part 2 is such a, I wouldn't say drastic drop, but it's sort of a tonal whiplash in a way, I would say.
Yeah, you feel more. It's a bit like Stones of Blood, isn't it? You feel more let down by it as a whole because of the second half is just so bit average compared to the first.
Should we go on to our ratings then?
Go for it.
I'm gonna, I'm just gonna stick with an 8. I'll go for an 8.
I'm gonna go 7.
Okay.
I'm afraid.
Okay.
We've diverged a bit now.
Oh well, let's see if it continues.
Yeah, what will happen with the evil one?
I think that this is quite an important story within the series. I think that throughout the series, we've had mention of Leela's home, the Sever team, and her father, but we never really see Leela mourn her father because it's literally the opening moment of the Face of Evil. He's sent to the Hoarder because Leela blasphemes about Zoan, and she's like, "Oh no, we shouldn't be doing this." And her father takes on the Hoarders, and this very much the start of the story plays up with that because we have very, very good sort of 1970s music where you're like, okay, this is proper Hinchcliffe stuff.
Yeah.
And we sort of get a recreation of Andor and, Leela sort of being tried and, her father being taken on to take on the Hoarders. And that's very much the main premise of this story, really. So what do you make of the evil one?
Yeah, I think go back to the Crooked Man for one last little bit. We got a small mention in there where the main female character in that has lost her father recently. And so she's sort of talking about that. And then Leela, for the first time from what we hear, mentions her father, but says, she doesn't really like to think about that or talk about that or anything. She grieves in her way, they grieve in hers. And I think that's something about Series 3 as a whole, that it can have those little moments in other stories that then pay off later on. Like you have this little bit of setup there that if you're just picking up the Crooked Man, it doesn't take away from it or anything because it's character setup. It's not like an arc. It's not like a ongoing mystery or anything. You don't lose out by having it there. But it adds so much to the overall picture where you then come from that to the evil one and really explore that relationship with her father a bit more and have that scene and sort of have the Doctor played off against him in a way, like he has replaced him as the father figure, really. And it's a nice idea to explore that because the Fourth Doctor himself has never, he arrived just after Andor died. Not Andor, sorry, Andor's the Soleil, isn't it, Leader's father?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he arrives just after he died, but he's never mentioned in the story again. Like Doctor Who just moves on from that sort of thing. And like I say, that moment in The Crooked Man almost is a way of retroactively explaining that by having Leela's way of grieving just be to try not to think about it, try not to talk about it or anything. And so it's nice to then dive into this story and have that be confronted directly. But the story itself, I think, even though it has it all there, it has all the ideas, and it has this very classic style story as well, with going on in the background of it, which I think you sort of need. You don't want anything too overly complex when you're having this character focused stuff. So you've got the spaceships, all these luxury cruise liners, but there's a mystery going on. Everyone's disappeared. You could imagine that as a classic Who story setting. You even got Michael Keating in there, who is famous from Blake Seven playing. Oh, can you remember his Blake Seven character?
I don't know. I've never seen Blake Seven.
Yeah,
so I'm the wrong person to ask on that front.
Yeah, Vila. I remembered the name now, Vila. But yeah, and that's sort of from the same time period. He was also in the Sunmakers. It's similar to David Collings from Robots of Death showing up in King of Sontar. It's keeping that going, and it adds to that classic feeling. So in a way, it's sort of like a classic story, but layered on top of that, you also have this character drama that they would have done back then with Leela and the Doctor and exploring that grief. However, with all that, it doesn't quite merge together for me. It feels like Nick Briggs has got all the ingredients there. He's written some very good stuff individually, but when he's come to piece it all together, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work for me. It almost feels a bit too basic and by the numbers in what it is, when it could be something much more.
I see your point, but I really enjoyed it just because of the character stuff with Leela, and I like that the title's a bit of play on the face of evil. That the Doctor was the evil one, but now Leela is the evil one within this story. So I think that was a nice little. And this story is currently on sale in the Master Sale because it does feature Jeffrey Beavers within this, basically pretending to be Zoannon in a way.
But a different. He's taken the name from her mind, but
yeah. But yeah, I liked that sort of thing because it becomes sort of a cat and mouse thing with the Fourth Doctor and Leela hunting the Doctor down. I don't think this is the best representation of the Fourth Doctor and the Master on Big Finish. I think Requiem for the Rocket Men's where you get that.
Yeah.
But I think that... Oh, go on.
This, it very much is more like it's Leela and the Master for the most part. The Doctor and the Master don't have that much to do together. It's like the classic. It's just a classic Doctor versus Master story in the sense when it comes to just those two. It's where Leela gets thrown into the mix that it changes it and mixes it up a bit.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoyed it. It almost sort of feels a bit all over the place in the sense of the way it sort of shifts location from like the liner to get like the authorities involved in all that sort of stuff.
Also, it shifts from one liner to another, which is sort of an odd one, but because it's the same setting, but at the same time, a bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the evil one, but it's got some really good sort of stuff with Leela, with sort of the nightmares and the Master manipulating that sort of guilt, and the Doctor is the evil one and all that sort of stuff. But like you say, but it does have moments where they don't quite all fit together to make the complete jigsaw. But
yeah, would you say it's one you've enjoyed more going back to?
I've always had a weird soft spot for this one. When I first listened to it, I never really understood the hate for it, but I can see the problems now going back on it. But I can, because I'm so invested in
You're
what
not
the
as
series...
bothered by them.
Yeah, because I can see what the story's trying to do with Leela as a character. And sort of the Master going, do you really want to be with the Doctor? This is not the life you want. You're a savage.
Yeah, there's some great stuff there.
So I think that's why I like it. I see the problems, but I think those moments, what we do get, make the story for me.
I think for me, in some way, it drags a bit as well. Like towards the end, I feel like scenes with the Master trying to get Leela to kill the Doctor go on a little bit too long. Like the tension has been wrung out, and then you're just a bit worn out by it.
I think I get that with the resolution. I did feel like, come on, can we get to the end now a bit?
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it does the job what it needs to, really.
Yeah, I think it certainly contributes to the overall arc very well, and is very much like a focal point of it.
Yeah, I would say if there's one story you want to get a flavour of what that series arc is, I think that this is the representation of that, really.
But also at the same time, I think it works better if you're going through the whole series.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah,
I think that's maybe why I have a bit more of a soft spot, because I listened to it, out of order, and this is the first time coming into this series in order. So I think I have a bit more of an appreciation for the story because of those character moments, and you pick up on the details, like I said to you before we started, that Leela's father gets mentioned quite a bit, even in Destroy the Infinite, really. So there is so much little repercussions from this story, and it's great, really.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, what ratings wise, I think I'm gonna go a 7 again for this one. How about you?
I'll go 7.5. I'll go 0.5 of a difference.
There we go. Just keeping the difference going.
Yeah, might as well make it a little bit more spicy and a bit more interesting, I guess. So the next story is Last of a Colophon. Now, this is an interesting one.
I think we might diverge a bit on this one.
Okay. When I first listened to it, I really enjoyed it, but revisiting it, I'm not too keen. Like, it's a story what uses the predictable nature to its advantage. It's very much a story like Tomb of the Cybermen meets sort of the Invisible Man in a way.
Yeah.
So, okay, you seem to be quite on the different side to me. So what do you make of Last of a Colophon?
It feels very much like a classic Who story in a lot of ways. Like, probably more so. Yeah.
You can picture the quarry. You can picture the quarry.
Yeah, that's true. And like the way it takes different elements and merges them together, like you say, Tomb of the Cybermen, it's got that there with the traps and stuff, particularly the electric doors at the front.
I was going to say Death to the Daleks as well, with sort of that going through the city and the virus in a way, like the Dalek plague.
I also feel like it's got a bit of Brain of Morbius in there as well, like how
I see that.
And also in the sense that is very much a Frankenstein pastiche. It takes that and takes it into a Doctor Who story, whereas, like you say, this takes the Invisible Man and turns that into a Doctor Who story.
I will say I do like the way it presents Morax, played by Gareth Thomas. Wonderful performance,
brilliantly. Yeah.
Because you think that he's in the right, the nurse character. He looks like one of the Clone Wars characters, like Ventress, isn't it? From the
Star Wars. I can see that actually, but with a nurse. Like, I love how that's all one thing as well. Like, it's not like an android nurse wearing a hat. It's all like there in one. I think also she's got like the Ventress neck piece looking at it.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that little aspect of the story, but I think I feel like my problem is that the story wraps up and you're like, okay, I enjoyed that. But then it's like, no, I've got another 10 minutes. I'm going to fill. And I think that's where my problem lies with it. Because I'm like, I was quite happy when the story finished at that point, and then it decides to continue. But like I said, it plays the predictable factor to its advantage.
I will say it does, like, in that extra lump at the end of the story, I do like that added twist to it as well. And that, the Doctor sort of leaves thinking, oh, we've done it all, we're all finished now. Oh, wait, no, there's something more going on here. But at the same time, there is a moment in that where I feel like there's a bit too much of an extended conversation between the Doctor and Morax there. Like, I feel like that could have been condensed a bit more to give the climax a bit more of a brisk pace rather than dragging out as much as it did.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I think also, like, another classic story that feels like the influences there is Genesis to Daleks as well, where you've got like this bunker. I don't know what happened to voice. You got this bunker where, everyone else outside of it is getting wiped out. In this case, by a disease as well, similar to how Davros says about to hold in my hands a virus that could wipe out everything. It's sort of similar to that. And then you also have this wheelchair-bound character with a similar voice quality for Davros, and also who seems to need the life support, but we end up finding out doesn't. So I think it's got some Genesis mixed with Brain of Morbius mixed with Tomb of the Cybermen is how I describe this story.
I think that's a good little blend. Like, I didn't really think that it was being like a pastiche of the Invisible Man, but now you mention it, it does feel very on brand for the Tom era. So I do like that.
Yeah, and I think I like the nurse character as well. Like, there's something wonderful about the relationship between her and Morax and how they play that off. And then also, it's quite a terrifying character as well, especially when you think that a lot of this is happening in the dark because Morax is blind. Why bother to pay the electricity bill?
Yeah.
And so,
that just reminded me of the scene in the Evil. Is it no a White Ghost when Leela's like trying to take off, attack like the plants. You've got that weird bit in the dark when she's like, "I strike left, I can hear."
Oh yeah, we had that as well. That was a good little moment, like insight into Leela's mind.
Yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
No, that's okay. And yeah, like speaking of that, we also get that play to Leela's advantage here, where she is a hunter. She knows how to move without making a sound, and so you've got this villain who is invisible and also is blind, like because of the way light travels and everything. To become invisible, he had to become blind. But Leela, being the huntress that she is, can use that to her advantage. She can also effectively be invisible in this confrontation. She knows how to throw her voice. She knows how to sneak up on people without making a sound. I think so. Again, Leela is used brilliantly here in this story. Even it's less arc heavy in terms of her character development. Like there's only that one line where the spaceship is taking off. The Doctor says, "Oh, they're going home," and she says, "I envy them," or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I love that little bit when you find out that Morax has taken like the nurse's like eyes or like the implants or whatever it is. That was a lovely sort of twist in the story that you can see now.
Yeah. One bit of logic I wasn't so sure about there though was the idea that he closes his eyelids and that somehow makes like surely the light would just travel through his eyelids and you'd just see the nurse's eyes under the eyelids. Like I didn't quite get the logic of that, but we can
look past that little detail.
Yeah.
Should we rate Last of Colophon
then? Yeah, I think we are good too.
I'm gonna go 7 for this one.
I will go 8.
Okay. I mean, we're definitely different, or on a different page now compared to the first two. So the next one is Destroy the Infinite, which is such an interesting one because it was sort of released for time where Dark Eyes was become, in full swing.
Top god. Top dog. Sorry. Yeah. And
so, I'll go on.
Oh, I say, you didn't have the new series license back then, so for Big Finish, the 8th Doctor was like the pinnacle. He was the most modern. He was the one who had the ongoing stuff, and so Dark Eyes was very much the thing that everyone wanted. It was the blockbuster event of 2014 for Big Finish, Dark Eyes 2 and 3, and that was where the Eminence was coming to play, wasn't it?
And this is very much a blockbuster 4th Doctor audio, isn't it? I think you described it as Star Wars in a way. And do you know what? Ever since you messaged me that and I listened to it, I was like, do you know what? I can see the Star Wars link with this story. So what do you make of Destroy the Infinite?
Yeah, like when I said that, it was Doctor Who meets Star Wars, but not as a pastiche, because it's not necessarily Nick Briggs looking at Star Wars and saying, "Oh, I can turn this into a Doctor Who story." It's Nick Briggs looking at the similar stuff to what George Lucas looked at when he made Star Wars and taking that and transferring that into Doctor Who instead. So it's not the direct route, it's a much more scenic route to get to this style, and it feels very British and very Doctor Who. Like you have a lot of World War II influences as well. Like the cockpit fights in Star Wars were very much inspired by that old World War II cockpit dogfights for that in the X-Wings. And so they've taken that here, put a more British spin on it. You've got like the character who's, what was his name? The one who rescues Leela.
Well, he's very much, stiff up British upper lip, isn't he, really?
Gavin is, like... he is a very fun character. Like I think he calls Leela old girl, doesn't he?
Yeah,
and my lovely and stuff. And Leela's having none of that. But it's some great stuff there. And obviously you've got like this huge ship that is posing such a threat, can destroy things at such long range. You have like the scenes in the mission control area, which feel a bit like the stuff on Yavin in the first Star Wars, where they're waiting there as the X-wings pick off the TIE. Not even TIE fighters. Yeah, there are TIE fighters that bit, sorry. But yeah, we're not talking about Star Wars here. And so it's sort of that similar feel where they're watching their big ships go after this even bigger ship that has the range to outmatch them. And so there's a lot of fun there. And you've got this ticking time bomb, haven't you? Where if it reaches at this point, then the war's lost. There's still like an area in space, isn't there, where the Infinite's going towards? That's a hub for like the human empire. And if it gets there, that's it. The war's pretty much lost. And it's similar to the Death Star is going to get to a certain point and blow up Yavin and the rebellion's over. So it's, yeah, there's a lot of similarities there, isn't there?
I mean, yeah, now you've put all that together, I'm like, I definitely see Star Wars now. I really do. So for the Eminence, this is technically their first encounter with the Doctor, but not the first big finish. So how do you feel like the Eminence are handled? Because they were at one point in Big Finish's history that they were sort of one of the best Big Finish original monsters, but now in recent years since Dark Eyes has finished, we've sort of forgotten about them. So how do you feel Big Finish handled them?
Yeah, they're an odd one, aren't they? And in terms of the Star Wars comparison, this is where that very much differs, because the Eminence is this much more disembodied thing. It's something that's very far out there. The idea of it turning its soldiers into corpses so that they fight for it. And that's some terrifying stuff. And it's something that differs from that quite a bit. So it has that more Doctor Who twist to it. This is very much where the Doctor Who side of things comes in. But it's an odd one because they are very much built up here. You've got the ongoing Dark Eyes thing. But then after Dark Eyes 3, they sort of drop off, really, don't they? Like they appear, you get the surprise origin at the end of Dark Eyes 4. And then that's it. We haven't heard from them since. So it's a shame because I really did enjoy the Eminence in this. And I think there's a lot more stuff they could do with that monster, but they sort of moved on to more exciting things instead.
I mean, I love the start of it with sort of one of the characters sort of taking the
breath of forever.
Yeah, the breath of and sort of him sort of transforming into an infinite warrior. Wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Yeah, there's something exciting about that as well. That it has all these different names for things, like the breath of forever. You have the infinite warriors. Like it's come up with some good naming structure for everything in the Eminence lore, I guess. And I think, I really did enjoy that world building side of it. And I think for the Eminence itself, it's not technically their first encounter. Like they know of the Doctor already. And so it's funny looking back at it now, because this must have been my first time listening to it after Dark Eyes 4 and knowing what the Eminence is from the end of that.
Blimey. God. I think I must have listened to Dark Eyes before this, I think. Yeah, I must have listened to Dark Eyes 2 first. Time's Horizon, that's a wonderful Eminence story.
Yeah. But like, because Dark Eyes 4 would have been the year after this. And I'm pretty sure I haven't gone back to it since. I know I listened to it a couple of times back in 2014, but never since Dark Eyes 4.
I sort of feel intrigued after listening to this. I feel like I want to revisit Dark Eyes.
Yeah, and Seeds of War as well. That's the Sixth Doctor Eminence story. That one's not as well regarded, I don't think, is it?
I mean, I'm not too keen on it. I think because I like to go back on it because we've gone back on this and opinions can change.
Never know.
And I think, looking back on it, we were all in the Dark Eyes hype wanting, Sixth Doctor versus the Eminence, and that story doesn't really have that. So I think now I know what the story has to offer, I might appreciate it a bit more.
Yeah. I think this is a story that from what I've seen, isn't generally overly well regarded.
See, I thought it was sort of one of the favourites of the series.
Really?
It was one of those stories when I first listened to it, I was like, okay, this is regarded as one of the best of the series. This is going to be great. I never found the love what other people had for it, but this re-listen, I have found the love what people had for it.
That's good. Yeah, I suppose it depends where you look as well, because I think back in the day, it was more me looking on the Big Finish forum back then. And what I saw, there wasn't a lot of love for Destroy the Infinite. So it just depends. Like, different places find different things enjoyable, don't they?
Well, we're 7 years, from the release of this. So I think, opinions can change. It's not the most recent content. So I think that, we can go back and reevaluate things and find a new love for it or critique it in a way.
I think it's nice that it also dives into some quite serious issues as well. Like the idea of humans going to war with a bit too much vigor, maybe, but also the fact that this is a war that kind of needs to be fought. Otherwise, everywhere's just going to end up subjugated by the Eminence.
Which it eventually does in Dark Ice.
Yeah.
But yeah, good story. Good story for me.
Yeah, I really do enjoy this one. I think it's funny going from one Nick Briggs one, which I thought was very by the numbers and, had a lot of interesting things in there, but didn't quite dive into them enough. This is one that has slightly less there on the character side of it, but is still really enjoyable and also has some terrific imagery. Like, I think a lot of the launch of the Infinite itself is a brilliantly produced little scene on audio. Like, you can imagine the sheer scale of it as it takes off. And then also the scale of the work in the quarry and everything, and them being chased through the pipelines afterwards. There's a lot of just brilliant little scenes like that in there.
It's full of so many wonderful things. What definitely needs to, be revisited. So,
yeah, pacing as well. Two-parter again. It runs along at a very brisk pace, but doesn't feel like it's rushing itself.
It does have chance to breathe, doesn't it? It's one of those ones what does have time to reflect on events what have just happened previously, but still maintain the energy it had in like the action sequences in a way.
Yeah, and I think like the two characters from what's the character? Delafos, the two characters who are like rebelling there, Tilliger and Sala, they get killed off quite quickly, but you have enough of a chance to get to know them before that happens.
Which I think that's sort of normally I think that was some people's problem with like the Evil One, that Nick Briggs would introduce a character, 5 minutes later that character would be out of the question, out of the scene, really.
Yeah, and I think there's also some great stuff from the Fourth Doctor when he's captured and about to be executed, and he's trying to talk Laravan down, remind him of his family. That was a great scene as well. He's the one who got turned into an Infinite Warrior at the start. The Doctor and Leela find him mid-transition. That's when they first encounter and start to learn about the Eminence. And so that's some quite horrific stuff as well. Like the idea of him just being calcified by this thing and made to forget and hate his family. And that's some quite terrifying idea as well. It's similar to the Cyberman conversion, isn't it? But very different at the same time and very unique. And so one line that I particularly love in that often comes to me, makes me chuckle, is when Sala, who's about to be executed along with the Doctor, says, "Doctor, don't antagonize him." And the Doctor says, "Antagonize him? He's about to execute us. I don't see how he can be any more antagonistic."
and then he's just killing time so he can save his skin, really. So yeah, it's a wonderful little moment, isn't it? I love that.
Yeah.
So many great little interplays within this series.
Yeah, it's something that Nick Bruce can do very well, those little interplays. It's not quite on the level of Guy Adams, but I think he does it well. So, what would you rate it then?
Do you know what? I'm going to go for an 8. 8.5. Go on, I'll push the boat. I'll be generous.
I'm going to go 9. To be honest, I really do enjoy this one. And listening back to it again, I still got that same kick out of it. It's short enough that you can easily just stick it on anytime and just have a good time with it, really. But at the same time, it helps you digest those heavier issues that it also puts in place.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. So the next story, The Abandoned. Should it have been left abandoned, or should it be one of these little gems from the series? Written by Nigel Fairs and Louise Jameson. I think this is her writing debut at Big Finish, I believe. Could be mistaken.
Yeah, it would be. Because I think she does do At a Girl later on. I think she also did a Omega Factor, and she is writing or has written another Fourth Doctor adventure, which is yet to be announced. That's released.
I think she did it with Nigel Fairs just because she wanted a bit of security, a bit of safety, a safety net, really, I think, with it all. Go on.
I listened to the behind the scenes of what is King of Sontar as well, and she mentions about writing it in that. And this story is actually recorded a year on from the others. The others were all done from about, I think, April, May to July 2012, and then this one comes along in June 2013.
Okay, that's a bit of a gap, really.
Yeah, but it works still in like the placement in the series, and I think that's something about this. It still all feels very much like each release is calculated to be where it needs to be in the series. Like you have this calm before the storm in some ways with the penultimate episode. Although it still is quite a bit of a mad one. It's something that it's not a finale though, is it?
No, as finale goes, it's not what you expect a finale to be, Zygon Hunt, is it?
But I think it's more of a finale than The Abandoned would be.
Yeah, is it rude to say that it's the weak link of the series?
No, I think that's fair to say.
I'd say it's the weak. I think it's the weakest for me of the series.
I think certainly it was the one I was least looking forward to revisiting. And so in that sense, I was a bit more pleasantly surprised by it because I had forgotten a lot of this story, to be honest. Like,
I'll be honest, it felt like I was listening to it for the first time, this one.
Same. Like Leela's father turning up at the end as sort of like this imaginary figure who is there to trick Leela is something that I just forgot was even in there. And so that took me by surprise, a lot of it. The woman who's in it, Lady Mariana, and her being this what's the Time Lord who owned the TARDIS before the Doctor, but ended up getting locked up somewhere deep within it and forgotten about. That was something I forgot was even part of, and that's quite a big thing for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Lore, but I just forgot it was even there. It's a bit I
think the whole story centers around the theme of imagination, really, isn't it? It's that when we're kids, we have such vivid imaginations, and when we grow up, we're told to put away our toys and do adult things, so we lose that sort of childlike sense of wonder and creativity. And this story has that wonderful connection to that, the inner child, really. And I think this story definitely explores that, because I remember speaking to Louise Jameson when I met her about it, because it was literally the year this story came out, and she was just talking about that she wanted to sort of talk about these sort of stories of imagination as a kid, and there's references to like Mother in like the shoe, like the family. I can't remember the story.
Yeah, and again, it plays into Leela taking things literally, doesn't it?
Yeah, and sort of the things what you imagine become true, isn't it, within this story?
I think that's great for like again, it's something that can only be done on audio, really, unless you have a huge budget, and the sound design for that works very well too. I think there's a funny scene where Leela says, like, she reads a line about whipping the children until they all fall asleep, and Leela says, "That is not right. I would send them out hunting and only whip them if they don't come back with anything."
I mean, it just shows the sort of the cultural divide in a way of the Sever team and human society, really. So it's interesting, really.
Yeah, I think one other odd thing about this story, now that I think about it, is that the abandoned of the title is a reference to the imaginary friends who we eventually give up on and move on from and then just forget about. And so I think that's something that feels very similar to the Land of Fiction. The idea that they're still out there somewhere trying to come back. It's similar to fictional characters trying to get into our world, but different. And the Abandoned, to be fair, does handle that all very differently from the Crooked Man, but nevertheless, it's still some similarity there between the two ideas.
I mean, one thing what I wasn't too keen on was the constant like screaming and laughing.
God, yeah,
like that really annoyed me. Well, not annoyed me, because I guess it's meant to be irritating, but it just sort of throws me out of the story for me.
There's too much of it. But I remember speaking to you about it, like way after I'd listened to it before this re-listen, and you always mentioned laughter, and it never stuck out to me in memory what it was. I feel like I completely forgot about everything to do with this story after my first listen.
Well, you abandoned it.
Yeah, like my imaginary friends, I just forgot. And yeah, and so when you mentioned that, it didn't even ring a bell for me, but I was like, I'll take your word for it. I'm sure it was in there. I'm not going to doubt you. And my God, you weren't wrong. It is on this re-listen, that was very annoying, especially at the start of part 2. There was so much of it when all 3 of them are together.
It's like a sensory overload, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like nails on a chalkboard. It just makes, especially when you're having this exposition there that they're trying to get out. But it's drawn out so much. And I think this story as well, it's the longest of the series, or nearly one of the longest of the series. And it does drag on a bit as well. Like there's so much surreal stuff going on that it's sort of hard to find a 3-act structure in there necessarily. I think there's definitely 2 halves to it, where the cliffhanger in the middle is the character finally breaking out. And there's also some quite fun stuff at the start of the story between the Doctor and Leela talking about the point of stillness, and all that.
So why is it a big bang if it is I love that stuff.
There's some brilliant moments in there, but yeah, overall it does feel a bit odd. But then at the same time, we were saying about Leela's father before, that ties in again with the arc, and it's something that I forgot overall in terms of Leela's character arc. It's her almost finally choosing the Doctor there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very much that.
Yeah. So even if it's got some weak things in terms of execution, and maybe it's just not to our taste, but there's still a lot to appreciate about it, if not enjoy.
I mean, thematically, it's got so many interesting ideas, like you say, like imagination, the idea of, imaginary friends and all that, and the lost, the abandoned, and sort of the surrealism, sort of almost sort of expressionist in a way, with the way it's sort of done. It doesn't feel like a conventional story,
It really does not.
Because it's sort of it's all TARDIS based, isn't it? Really, it's Edge of Destruction, but completely off the walls, isn't it?
I mean, even the cover is a wall being broken.
Yeah, I mean, I only just noticed. I mean, this shows how much I pay attention to the cover of this. It has a secondary console room in it. It's weird.
Does it?
Yeah, and
I can spot that back there now.
the story again, it's such a visual story, isn't it? Like, weeds growing from the console as well. It's such a rich visual story, what you can easily picture. So it is great for that.
Do you think the brick wall is a funny reference to Invasion of Time, where there was a lot of brick walls inside the TARDIS?
It could be. It could be like a in joke, really. But I do like that, actually.
Yeah. It's funny how it all plays out.
Sure. Should we rate it?
Go for it.
I'm gonna. I'll be generous. I'll give it a 7. I like what it's doing, but just the screams just put me off it, and the laughing.
Yeah, I think on this. I'm tempted to maybe go 6, but that feels too harsh for it. But 7 feels. I'll go 6.5 because I feel like there's so much good ideas there, but just it doesn't do it for me in terms of execution. And so I feel like maybe I'm being just too uncultured with it.
I feel like we should revisit it in another
scholar.
7 years.
We should get James to join us. Get him to The Abandoned.
But I do like that because I mean, the story itself does feel sort of a bit Samuel Beckett in a way. Just feel that sort of out there sort of type of theatre stuff. But should we go on to the final story?
Yeah, we will go for it, which is also available on was also available on vinyl. It's probably a bit harder to find now.
I mean, it did hang around a bit, didn't it? On vinyl. It wasn't.
I wonder how much is it going to go for on eBay? I'll have to
see. That's the thing with sort of the big Finnish vinyls, but there's that initial scarcity of it for like a week, and then a week after you can get it pretty cheap. I mean, I'd be interested to see how the Echoes of Extinction vinyl goes for, to be honest.
I'm seeing. It depends. I found one that's going for 25 quid, but I don't think that's sealed.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it goes up to about 50. There's one there for 35. It's hanging around 50 quid usually. But
that's not too bad then.
Yeah, there's certainly some that will be a lot more. But yeah, luckily I think we both picked it up, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, we've got it stored and saved, and it'll be our pension.
It's wonderful listening to vinyl, isn't it? I actually only listened to part 2 on vinyl.
I have, I think when we get the vinyl releases, the Tom Baker stuff, sort of my favorite to get on vinyl because it just has that slice of retro.
It feels very right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Dalek Universe as well, I think, because that's very much sending the 10th Doctor back into the classic series, doing that retro 60s style Terry Nation stuff. That suits vinyl as well.
Definitely see that.
Yeah.
But speaking of sort of retroness, Zygon Hunt, the sound design, my God, it just feels very evocative of Terror of the Zygons, doesn't it?
Like that opening scene, the opening music matches it pretty closely, like in tone, certainly.
And then you've got the sound design on top of that of like the Zygon technology. It just feels like a great sort of continuation of Terror of the Zygons.
Yeah, really. And it is a direct sequel to it in a lot of ways. With this is what happened to that fleet that Broton signaled, like they were coming back to Earth. What happened? It's basically doing what they did with the Poseidon adventure, but better.
Yeah, that's all we've forgotten one, isn't it? That one with the Kralls. We don't really speak of the Kralls much.
It's the series 1 finale, but we just forget about it.
It sort of ties into like the Trail of the White Worm, and that's not exactly the greatest of stories out there. But yeah, great moments with Leela, with sort of repairing that animal's wing. That was a lovely bit with like the moss.
And again, we're sort of going back to her character and her internal code in the idea that she's a hunter, but here we have people hunting for sport, and she doesn't approve of that. Like there is no honor in that for her. Like hunting is about survival. Like she hunted on her planet, which doesn't have a name because they wouldn't have survived otherwise. They needed that, and also it was sort of forced upon them by Soanon at the time. And so here it's interesting exploring that side of her in a different way and having her coming up against these hunters who are much less honorable, really, and just gits.
Yeah, pretty much. They are, scum of the earth, really, aren't they? Those characters within it.
Yeah, and like again, you've got some political commentary in there with these quite bad people who are in these high positions because they are so well connected.
And I guess that sort of mirrors modern society of like the African trophy hunting and all that, and that when the pandemic was going on, we could still go fox hunting or whatever. It just seemed very wrong in that sense.
Or go for a drive to the castle. I can't remember what it was now.
Bernard's Castle to test my eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, Capaldi was blind. He didn't go drive into a castle, did he?
No. I mean, he went driving across time and space in a TARDIS, but
it wasn't a pandemic. It was fine.
Actually, no, he didn't, did he? Because all the stories after Oxygen are set on Earth. I'm sorry, Doctor, I've misjudged you there.
Well, there was a simulation. No, I don't know. Been a while since I've watched Series 10. I need to revisit that, actually.
Yeah. But, going back to Zygon Hunt, there's a lot of interesting topics to explore there with the Solar Knights and what they're up to, and how, again, it's a story that has human villains rather than, like, the Zygons are there, there's conflict there. But in the end, the Zygons are not the bad guys.
See, Big Finish have never really done like Zygons are all out baddies within the story.
No,
really.
definitely. Yeah.
They've always sort of taken on the Zygons and misunderstood. Yeah, I think the closest you get to that is Death in Blackpool with like is it a zygote or something where it's sort of a Zygon what can't transform anymore. It's trying to take bodies or whatever. I think that's the closest it gets to like an evil Zygon, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would like them to go back to the Zygon to do a proper villainous Zygon story, but here I think it does work, especially since it's a refugee ship at this point. These Zygons just want a home, really, but have sort of been a bit single-minded in that, and they've got the transmission from Broton saying, "Oi, come here to Earth, I'm gonna make it all good for you." And so and also we've got like the racism and xenophobia of these humans. Well, like they're keeping the aliens out. All aliens are bad. We don't want any of them in, and that's very much reflective of a lot of discussions in modern society about immigration,
especially now with Brexit and all that sort of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's nice to. Well, it's not nice that that's happening.
Yeah,
but it's nice for a story to be able to explore that, and I mean it's a common enough thing in Doctor Who and sci-fi, but here it's quite interesting as well. The idea that this person who is hero worshipped by a lot of people in like the solar system for keeping the aliens out, and yet a lot of that is because of the bigotedness against the aliens and him being a massive bigot in himself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but Nick Briggs has got onto something quite topical there, hasn't he, with this story?
Yeah, considering it was probably written back in like what
2011 to 12.
2011, yeah. And
it was recorded 4th of July 2012. So I imagine he probably started with the ideas in 2011, but I don't think he'd put pen to paper until 2012.
Would you say, I mean, out of the series 3 Fourth Doctor stories, do you feel like this was the right one to get a vinyl?
I'd say yes, to be honest, because like you say, it's got that very evocative 70s soundtrack to it. It feels very well suited for vinyl, and I think also it helps that it's got a returning monster there. You have King of Sontar has that as well, but it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and I think even though the story itself, you've got the A, B, and C, I think it would have been a bit unfair to put that on vinyl and not do White Ghost. So yeah, I will say Zygon Hunt was the right choice. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I love King of Sontar, I think the ending does sort of put it at a disadvantage, really. I think if they were to do a Sontaran Big Finish story on vinyl, then Eternal Battle's probably the one.
That'd be a good one.
That would be a good vinyl. I'd be interested to see what vinyl that is actually, what color they'd go for. Mud splatter? I don't know.
No. We're currently waiting for about 6 more announced vinyls to come out before we get any new ones.
I mean, it'd be interesting if they go online like Echoes of Extinction, or they are gonna stick to the Asda stuff, really.
Yeah, I feel like at least one of them will, but and then depending on how things go pandemic-wise and stuff moving forward.
But it just, I mean, there's so much of it now. It's online exclusives and that, and I think that's what it should be. Really, it should be.
Yeah.
Every fan has a chance that if your store's not on the list, then sorry, you're just gonna have to go elsewhere for it. So I think that it's a much more fairer way of people to get a product, really. So I would like Big Finish to continue.
Yeah. Although not when they surprise you with it the month before they announced they were going to surprise you with it, and then it goes within 30 minutes.
Yeah, because I remember seeing like the tweet, and then like I went on the website and I was like, oh, it's sold out. I've missed that opportunity. So I was a bit gutted, really.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to come out with more copies of them, because Dalek Universe, that's got 1,000. That's still going strong on there. Like, you don't need that amount because it's a story that's already been released. With the classic Doctors, New Monsters sets.
I think Zygon Hunt was I think that was 1,000 or 1,500.
Oh yeah, that's true actually. So I wonder how many Echoes of Extinction really was, because I never gave it.
Because I mean, it took a few days for it to sell out on Amazon. So I managed to get it from Amazon in the end.
That's good.
Which worked out cheaper than Big Finish, actually. Though you missed the download, you kind of make up for it on the postage because you get free postage.
Oh yeah, Amazon, they do £5 courier, don't they? With
so you win some, you lose some, really, with that. But they get that £5 back on another Big Finish, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you might even, if you want the like interviews and behind the scenes, you might even need the Big Finish download version.
Yeah.
I don't know
because I think the extras are Big Finish. Oh well, I wouldn't say they're Big Finish exclusive, but they're only on the download, aren't they? They're not on the vinyl itself.
I don't know if they've confirmed whether there are interviews or not, but who knows?
I think they are, but I just think if they were an Asda exclusive, you wouldn't have got the extras anyway. If that makes sense, I wouldn't have got the download separately, because if I've got the story already, I don't really need to get it on download as well, really.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think we've drifted away quite a bit.
Yeah, we've drifted away.
Hunt itself. But, I think certainly right choice for vinyl out of this series, and I'll be honest, it's one that I never liked so much back when it first came out. I think part of it was the overhyping of it. For me, I was very excited for it. When I got the subscription, it was July after The Abandoned had come out, so I got all those stories together.
Well, didn't it get delayed, didn't it, that story?
Might have done.
It did get delayed. The CD got delayed, I remember that.
Yeah, that might be it as well. And so I was very much waiting for that story as the last one. I sort of overhyped myself for it a bit and was disappointed. But now, when I got the vinyl and re-listened to it on that, I did get more of an appreciation for it, really. And this re-listen now, before diving on just earlier today, to be honest, I started listening in the afternoon in preparation for this, and I did have a lot more of appreciation for it.
Yeah, I think it was one of those ones where people have Terror of the Zygons in such high regard because it's one of the best Fourth Doctor stories. So I guess a lot of people went in thinking, okay, this is going to be Terror of the Zygons quality, and it's not the heights of Terror of the Zygons, but it's a worthy follow-up of Terror of the Zygons, I feel.
It's nice. It nice sort of caps it off, doesn't it? It's almost like a Terror of the Zygons epilogue, I guess.
Yeah, you could see it sort of being in a Target book, just to go, the Doctor and Lily went to Garros and they told him about these refugee Zygons. Like, you can just feel like Tarrant would do like a little witty, one paragraph explaining how the Zygon invasion finished or whatever.
Yeah, it's a nice little story. And I think, like you mentioned earlier while we talked about The Abandoned, how it's not quite a finale in terms of scale. How do you feel about that?
I think it's kind of a precursor to what we get now in TV Doctor Who, because I think it's such a different thing, and I think what we've got with the Fourth Doctor stuff, that I think it makes Zygon Hunt stand out even more, especially in the bunch of the first six, or well, first seven, well, maybe actually, yeah, first 8 stories, first 8 series, I should say, because it's the standalone finale. Other than that, every finale is a two-parter in some regard, isn't it? You know, you've got
up until now with series 11 and 12.
So I think that's what makes Zygon Hunt stand out, because it breaks that trend of what a finale is, but still has that sort of, yeah, go on.
Yeah. Although series 10, that feels like less of a finale to me with the primeval design, because even though it's double the length, that's the standard length of that series.
I think you said in the past that it's very much a combination of Fourth Doctor and Leela stories put in a box set, and that's your series. It's not really a cohesive series as like series 3.
Yeah, certainly. And I think as well, having like a returning monster kicking off and then capping off the series, I think that helps it feel like a finale for me. Even though it's not quite as epic as the scale of something like Destroy the Infinite, I think this one works better as a finale for me. It has that nice moment between the Fourth Doctor and Leader at the end, capping off the series as they talk about stopping off at places and helping out where they can, not wanting to be on a mission, but just not leaving any stone unturned.
Yeah, I see that, because it is sort of everything comes full circle, you know, with the Time Lords missions, and you know, but they don't want to do that. They just want to, you know, carry on learning and seeing the wonders out there, really, and helping out.
Yeah, certainly does have that vibe to it. And we also again have mentions of Leela being homesick. I think it's a shame that they didn't quite follow up on that. I think that's the one area I feel like this story lets itself down and lets the series as a whole down, because we have these little moments where the Doctor's on a the Doctor is on a planet similar to where Leela comes from, but Leela is more chiefly here being reminded of home with this jungle setting. And so we get a couple of mentions in part 1 about the Leela being homesick, which ties back into Last of Colophon, where she's envious of people going home. But then it feels like back in the TARDIS, there should have been a moment where the Doctor and Leela fully talk about that. And Nick Briggs-Stroni can do that. He did that back in The Evil One. And that scene even then gets repeated in The Abandoned as well. It gets like a flashback to it. And so it feels like maybe that there should have been something else like that where they talk about Leela's home here, just to cap that off.
It always feels like a shame that they never went back to the Sever team in a way, to see how things progressed. Yeah, with you know, Zoan, and you know, whether they did press the big red button.
Yeah.
You know, and I think people have sort of speculated, with you know, God of Phantoms, Zoanon. Which would be an interesting take, actually. And I mean, I don't know if I want to see the origin story of Zoanon when the Doctor first encounters it, because we sort of get the full picture. And I think that's what makes Face of Evil so special, because it's a place
it covers it all. There isn't a story there, is there? Like, that story is pretty much covered by Face of Evil itself. It is just simply he shows up, this computer needs sorting out, the Doctor's like, oh, I can help, and then leaves.
Yeah.
Should we rate Zygon Hunt itself now? Because
again,
we've drifted off a bit.
Yeah, let's rate it and then wrap up series 3 of the Fourth Doctor Adventures. I'm gonna give it an 8.
I am also going to give it an 8.
There we go.
We matched off in the middle, but we came back together for the end.
Started off together, drifted, come back together in the end. So yeah, there we go.
That's what it's all about.
So, are you glad that you revisited this series? Do you feel like you have a new appreciation for it at all?
Oh, definitely. It's a funny one, because even though I do have those rose-tinted glasses for it, it was my first Big Finish series. It was something I really dived into and loved at a time. It's something that I've just sort of forgotten about, because there is so much other stuff that Big Finish has come out with since then. New Doctors being added, so much different things to explore. And so I almost just forgot how good this series was, and have come back to it with even more of an appreciation for different things. And as well, there's something different about revisiting a series all in one go rather than just picking out random stories occasionally to go back to.
I think that's sort of the beauty of like the Blu-ray box sets as well, because we're so used to going, I fancy that story tonight. But like you said, I'm glad that we did this actually, and you know, who knows, we might do series 4 or series 5 or whatever. But it's nice to revisit it, because it's nice to see where it all started for us in a way. And to see how far, not how far we've progressed, but how far Big Finish has changed over that 7 years, which is quite drastic. You know, when we think about it, that we were just busy with the main range, 4th Doctor and 8th Doctor. Now we're dipping our toes into so many different things, and it's nice to go back to, I wouldn't say simplistic stories, but it's just nice to go back to.
It's a simpler time for Big Finish. The stories aren't simpler, but the layout of it all is simpler, I suppose.
And they're just a lot of fun, and I almost feel sort of bad sort of forgetting about series 3 in a way, because I always sort of forget that it's sort of not that memorable as a series. But you know what, revisiting it and noticing on like the little character moments throughout this series, it's one of the richest character series Big Finish have done for the 4th Doctor. And if you want your 4th Doctor and Leela stuff, this is the ideal place, and I can see why you jumped on with this one.
It might not be the best individual stories, but when it comes to the characters themselves, exploring it, having it as a whole, it's definitely one of the best for that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because you sort of drift away with that with series 4. It just goes back to, it's just the 4th Doctor and Leela having adventures in a way. You sort of lose that teacher-student dynamic, which you do get back in series 10 in the World Traders, though.
You get like little bits of that in series 10, but again, even it's funny that series, now it's in box sets, you think that'd be even more ideal for this style of storytelling where we carry on character threads throughout. But there, the stories all feel very separate and very much like they could be listened to in any order, and it wouldn't make a one jot of this.
Yeah, that is very true.
But again, it feels like I'm slamming series 10. I'm not. I did enjoy that one more than I was expecting to. But
I mean, I enjoyed volume 1 more than part 2.
Yeah, I will agree that my favorite 2 are the middle 2 stories, Day of the Comet and Tribulations of Thaddeus Nook. I feel like the World Traders started off very strong, didn't end too well, and then Primal Design again started off very strong and ended even worse, sadly.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think my favorite of series 10, just because we're talking about it, I think Day of the Comet is my favorite.
I think I'd just agree with that. Again, that's another one that drifts off a bit in the second half, but still is good throughout.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll cover series 10 in 7 years or something.
Yeah, we'll give it. Yeah, we'll do a series a year. Get series 4 done next year.
Yeah,
series 7. That'd be a good one.
I mean, I do find myself revisiting Return to Talos a fair bit. Actually, I do revisit that one a fair bit.
Do you skip Fate of Krelos then? Just go, or do you?
I skip Fate of Krelos.
I
enjoy it, but it's one of those ones where I
you
remember
don't need
what's
it
happening.
to listen. Yeah, you don't need it for Return to Talos, to be fair. Although it adds to it, but if you know what's there, you've listened to it before, you could just dive in.
I just want me 60s Cyberman action bursting through the walls and the destruction of Krelos itself. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of fun to be had there.
A lot of fun.
And it's funny thinking back to how long ago that was as well.
I mean, oh gosh, that was when we first really started these, wasn't it? When we started doing these Big Finish fans, and yeah,
I remember that news coming out that the Tomb Cybermen were returning. Like that would have been just after I finished my series 3 listen, seeing that news come out and getting very hyped up for that.
It was one of those rare occasions where you got the cover art from day one as well.
Yeah, like it wasn't quite the cover art, was it? It was like this promotional image that then sort of melded into the cover art. What's something, and a quick note while we're on that topic, cover art for Series 3 feels so consistent across the board, doesn't it?
It's that sort of brownie orange motif, isn't it? But then you get to Zygon Hunt, which just goes, we'll just go red, but it's still in keeping, though, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it all feels like it belongs together as one series. It's all that same style, whereas with Series 4, it then all feels like quite different styles. Like when you compare the Fate of Krelos cover to Return to Telos cover, they feel completely different.
Or like the Darkness of Glass as well. That's very, very striking cover in its own right.
I think in some ways that can be good for some stories because it makes them stand out more as covers. Like Series 3, it can, in a way, all blur into one. But so I do like that thematic resonance between them all, though.
Should we do like an overall rating for the series?
Nah, why should we? Yeah, we will. We will.
Okay. You know what? I'm just going to stick with an 8. I think it's a good, solid series.
Yeah, I think 8 is fair. I will go 8 as well. I think why break up the trend of us agreeing at the end?
No, I thought you'd go a little bit higher since you've got quite a bit of a nostalgia for it.
A high 8, I'll say, but
yeah, okay.
I think it does have it. It's got its issues that I feel like I can look over a lot more, just because the rose tinted glasses. But I do feel like an 8 is what it deserves and what it's worthy of.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's a good jumping on point for Tom and Leela. More so than what had gone before and after, really.
Yeah, certainly.
Especially like Series 7 or whatever. Which is probably the weakest of the Fourth Doctor and Leela stuff, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, from memory, for me, that was my least. I think that was very much the time when we wanted to get to what's Anne Kelso, wasn't it? We wanted to skip over that and get to the new companion.
But yeah, there we go. I think that's us all done for tonight, really. That's our Fourth Doctor Series 3 special done. I hope that people who stuck around have enjoyed this, and we'll be back for a few more in the future.
Yeah. What is our next one, Pendal? I can't.
What, Big Finish fans or just live streams in general?
Yeah, they're both for it.
I think season 8's on the card. I would like to do season 8. Big Finish fans wise, probably 9th Doctor, maybe. I mean, I don't know if we're doing Dalek Universe as a bunch or separate volumes. I don't know. I
suppose it depends how much we enjoy the first one in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, 9th Doctor's definitely going to be the next one, guaranteed.
Got a couple of special guests for that one.
Hopefully. That'll be like a proper throwback to when we first started Big Finish fans. But I mean, who knows? We might do a few little revisits. This wasn't really. I don't think when we come into this year that we'd do Fourth Doctor Series 3. We might do another revisit, maybe. Another Fourth Doctor or whatever. Really, it's whatever we fancy revisiting.
Yeah, thank you for giving me a good excuse to revisit this one. Have a bit of fun there.
I mean, you're completely right, because there's so much coming out, which is wonderful. But it's always good to look back and revisit some of the old favorites, I guess.
Tell you what, I'm going to throw it out there now. I'd love to revisit Fifth Doctor box set. That was an early one I got.
You know what? Let's do it.
Yeah, well,
let's do it. Let's do Iterations of Iron, Psychodrome.
Bit of a shorter re-listen for us as well. So
not only commitment. Yeah, only what, 4 hours?
Yeah,
half the length for this series. So yeah. Do you know what? I'm interested.
It'll also be interesting to look back at that, because that's very much the direction Big Finish ended up going down, with obviously now the monthly range has ended. 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors are all going into their own box set ranges now. 4th Doctor Adventures shifted to a box set format. So it'll be interesting looking back to that as like with that perspective now of how things have shifted.
You could say it's sort of the prototype, really, for modern day Big Finish, really. It's going to be interesting because we sort of know what's coming with Adric, with like the monthly range. So it'd be interesting to go just because that box set's still quite highly regarded, isn't it? That box set, you know, when I look at the Davison stuff, that's, you know, just from memory, I always think, oh yeah, Iterations of I, brilliant, and then, you know, Psychodrome being a better version, but a better version of Castrovalva. So you know what, that is a good shout to revisit. So I'm definitely down for that.
Yeah, look forward to that, everyone listening. Hope who knows when it'll come along. There's a lot of other Big Finish that gets in our way of these re-listens, so
yeah.
We'll pencil in a date for that off stream,
and then we'll get back and we'll do the Fifth Doctor box set, which will be fun. But I'm trying to think what other ones I'd quite. I mean, the Locum Doctors one would be an interesting one.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go back to a main range trilogy of any kind, really, now that it's over.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Locum Doctors could be a good one.
Because that's an interesting one, but that's a trilogy what people soured on quite quickly.
We all were very hyped for it, and then it came out, and it sort of didn't work for us.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah, it's a good concept, isn't it? But
it's sort of a thing what you think they should have done, you know, when, you know, the Companion Chronicles weren't a thing. It seems like a thing they should have done just to get those actors involved in early Big Finish, really.
Yeah, because it is like pre-Early Adventures time. Would the Early Adventures series 1 have been out?
2014 Early Adventures. 2014.
Yeah, so it would have been. But again, still, like the Early Adventures themselves have evolved to become a bit more less narration heavy compared to those early ones. And you've got more recastings in there now. Like Series 1 didn't have any of that. And so Locum Doctors is an interesting one in that it is very much, let's explore these eras that we can't explore normally, at least in a full cast environment.
And now we have the door open to that, really. I mean, we could always do like one of the most recent releases.
I think especially Third Doctor, though, like that was something that we had hardly ever touched. Now it's funny looking back to that, where we have the Seventh Doctor substituted in, we have Joe Grant, and then a bit of Mike Yates in this weird story that doesn't quite work as the Third Doctor era story.
I swear I would get a little bit of Tim in it as well. I mean, I could be misremembering.
Oh, maybe because he would have been, because he was in Light at the End before that, and then Third Doctor Adventures themselves came out later that same year, Volume 1.
But then again, the memory cheats. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
That's another one penciled in, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I think we better stop now before we book up the entire year.
Yeah, and that's without the most recent stuff. I mean, the War Master would be a good one to do, James, if you're listening.
Yeah,
let's do War Master. That'd be pretty cool to revisit that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that concludes it. Hope that you've all enjoyed our little Fourth Doctor rambling about the recent news of the Ninth Doctor and all the other Fourth Doctor goodness, and our little speculation of what we're going to do next. While live on air, really. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed.
Thank you for putting up with our tangents and random little moments throughout as we drift on and off the Fourth Doctor Series 3.
I mean, it wouldn't be a Big Finish fans if we didn't drift in and out of an actual topic.
Yeah, that's very true.
I think that's the charm of it all, really, to be honest.
Well, for us at least, hopefully.
For us, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, hopefully for the listeners as well. Anyway, we are drifting off of the I'm drifting us away from the outro here. I'm very sorry. So yeah, I will let you finish that off and say bye to everyone.
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you on. And we'll see you very soon for more Big Finish live stream goodness. I'm sure I reckon season 8 will probably be the next live stream we do, whenever that will be. But that'll be upcoming very soon. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time. So thank you very much, and goodbye.